Hi, I'd just like to welcome everyone on site and online, and I think you'll have a really good day. Q&As will always be after the talk, and I'll introduce, actually, I'd just like to thank the committee, Ellen, Marilyn and Simone for all the work in preparing the agenda for this event. And we are happy to have new members on the committee next year if you want to join. Oh, and thank you for Shirley for all her work. It's been really, really good. Thank you. We'll get there eventually. Okay, I'd like to introduce Naomi from the Regional Council, and she will talk about the Tamworth Museum.
Good morning all, both in person and online. So I'd just like to also begin with acknowledging that we are meeting today on the lands of the Gomeroi people. I'd like to pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and anyone of First Nations descent with us here today. So my name is Naomi Blakey and I work for Tamworth Regional Council as the Museum Operations and Visitor Engagement Officer. So as part of my role, I'm extremely lucky to work with a large mix of collections across the Tamworth region with a primary focus on operations and collection management of the Tamworth Power Station Museum, which is literally just there, and the Australian Country Music Hall of Fame, which is the other side of Peel Street. So they're both two very different collections with very different stories, but both with incredible human stories behind them. So welcome to Tamworth for those who are visiting. It's a city with an extremely rich history, and today I'm only going to touch on two very unique aspects of our region's history. So that's Tamworth as the City of Light and Tamworth as the country music capital. So both are very accurate titles for Tamworth, but both were forged in completely different centuries. So today we'll go through the history of both of those aspects and their associated museums, collections and stories in chronological order. So we'll start with the Tamworth Power Station Museum and then we'll head into the Australian Country Music Hall of Fame. So the Tamworth Power Station Museum. So why Tamworth? So on the 9th of November every year, Tamworth celebrates. Celebrates what, you might ask? It celebrates Tamworth as the first city in the Southern Hemisphere to have municipally funded electric street lighting. The question still remains though, why Tamworth? So in 1881, Alderman William Smith, who was supported by George Hook, who was of the Observer, which was one of Tamworth's newspapers at the time, proposed that the town should install electric street lighting. Unfortunately for these progressive gentlemen, they were just a little bit too early with their enthusiasm for the very new untried technology. So at the time, there was nobody that could actually supply the required plant and technology. In 1882, Tamworth Borough Council decided to go ahead with the installation of gas light street lights, and that was at 25 lanterns originally. Then 5 years later, in 1887, a street lighting subcommittee was formed, and this was influenced by Alderman Smith. They took a fresh look at the best, most economical way to light the town's streets. So fresh tenders were invited and 3 offers came in. So 1 from the gas lighting company and 2 for electric lighting. So after due consideration, the Mayor Alderman W.F. Tribe signed a contract on the 18th of January in 1888 with George Harrison and Alfred Whiffen, who were representing the plant company, Crompton and Company, and they were an English firm, to light the streets of Tamworth. And that was for both the plant itself and the electric lights to be operational within a 10-month period. So the original contract was for 2 18 kilowatt steam driven direct current generating sets three 3,000 candle power arc lights, which were in the main part of Peel Street. So if you are wandering up there at any point today or while you're here, essentially one was outside of where we've got our Coles complex, the other outside of where we've got our post office, and then the other one was outside of the Brisbane Street, Peel Street intersection. And then they also had incandescent lights in the rest of the town, each with 2 to 3 lamps in it, and they were out of the converted gas street lights, which were actually purchased from the gas company. So altogether, it came to 13.5 miles or 21.5 kilometres of electric street lighting, which was switched on by Mayoress Elizabeth Piper at 7:30 p.m. on the 9th of November in 1888. So the decision to actually convert electric street lighting in 1888 was influenced by Alderman Smith and all of his research and essentially his pushing, but it was also for sound economic reasons as well. Electric lighting was a much cheaper option than continuing with the gas street lights and some of the implications it had. So for example, needing to have someone to physically go out and turn on and turn off each lamp every day, as opposed to literally just being able to hit a switch and bam, they're on. So this part of Tamworth's history was only just the beginning of Tamworth in electrical generation. So Tamworth's first power station was located, as I said, just at 216 Peel Street in 1888. And then the electric lamps were installed in the groups with the 2 or 3 converted gas lamps. And then you had your 3 candle power arc lights as well. So at that time, the capacity of the power station was for that. It was for street lights. So by 1907, they had an extension added, and that essentially created a whole new power station. So that was housed, as far as we can tell, in a larger boiler house, which was at the rear of the original station. And that was supplying steam to 2 Bellis and Morecambe high-speed engines, one of which we still have in the museum. And if you're popping down today, you'll be able to see. So these new engine generator sets were housed at the rear section of the purpose-built building, and it had a specially ventilated room to house a storage battery, which was about 240 volts. So council's decision to invest in this new infrastructure, this new plant, was a response to requests from the townspeople. They were really happy with the street lights and they wanted to start to convert their home gas lamps into electric as well. So private supply was at first taken from the street lighting mains. So that station was really working hard and it was only available when the lights were on. And for a time, especially early on, the lights didn't turn on when there was a full moon because it was considered brighter than the street lights. So if it was a full moon and you wanted electricity in your home, I'm afraid it was a no. So over time, they added some general supply mains so that you could have 24/7 power, which was incredible. So in 1909, the council then opened an electric showroom, which was the extension of the electrical building, and that's where the main museum is housed today. And by 1919, 1920, the station was really starting to hit capacity and was at the end of its working life. So council was like, well, do we continue to expand Peel Street where we have it at the moment, or do we look at another area? And so they looked at another area in time. And that's when it was chosen to invest in a completely new high voltage power station, which had space for future expansion as well. So at that point, they're like, well, where can we go? And Maria Street was chosen, and that was in the 1920s. So anyone who has driven around Tamworth, we've got our powerhouse hotel run by Ridges, and that is the site of the second power station. Sadly, the only remaining part of it is the obelisk, which you'll still see, and they've actually done a really great job restoring that one as well. And it gets lit up at night, which is very pretty, but a beautiful part of our history. So the new Marius Street Power Station, it was originally commissioned on the 25th of November in 1922. And that was essentially built to provide electricity to the Tamworth region into homes, as well as the electric street lighting. And by 1925, so only 3 years later, they actually had to install an additional 400 kilowatt engine. That's how much electricity was expanding in Tamworth. And by 1954, the station had a total capacity of 28,000 kilowatts. So the power station was developed just to meet the need placed by council's active promotion of electrical energy and investment in high voltage transmission systems to end up supplying electricity to much of northern New South Wales. The availability of cheap, reliable energy from the Tamworth power station was a major factor in the development of Tamworth and the local area in New South Wales as well. And by the 1940s and 50s, Tamworth had really established itself as an electrical town. So as of 1956, due to some changes, the council's electricity assets were transferred to the Electricity Commission, and then they held them from there. So Tamworth's, like when council managed the power station, it was run as a standalone business with loan repayments and other operating costs coming from the income received from the sale and supply of electricity to customers in the immediate district and across New South Wales, which is pretty incredible, really, when you think about it. A very notable man, just to take consideration of as part of the power station's history, was Mr. Vincent Guy Cable. You might recognise the last name Cable, and because of him, we've got Cable Avenue, which is a couple of streets over here where we are. So he was the manager of Tamworth's electricity undertaking from 1924, and he became the chief electrical engineer in 1935 until his death in September 1947. He was a prudent manager and a true visionary, and the plans that he put in place were put into practice long after he died, which is quite incredible. So essentially, Cable was pivotal in ensuring that it wasn't just Tamworth that had electricity, that it did get expanded to towns outlying just Tamworth, which is pretty amazing. In the 1960s, the Marion Street Power Station was closed as electricity production was moved closer to the coal mines of the Muswellbrook and Singleton areas, and it was a bit of an end of an era for Tamworth at that time. So leading up to the centenary of Tamworth as the first City of Light on the 9th of November in 1988, the Tamworth Power Station Museum opened on the site of the first power station in Tamworth and the 1907 Power Station Electric Showroom building. The power station collection contains approximately 9,500 objects of historical, cultural and social significance, and the museum's displays chronicle the use of electricity in Australia and showcases innovations in electrical science and design from around the world. The diverse collection ranges from important artefacts and machinery spanning Australia's industrialisation, as well as common household appliances from the 20th century. So of the 9,500 objects in the collection, I worked to select about 5 highlights, most of which you'll be able to see this afternoon on your tour of the museum if you're able to pop down. So the first one is a very special piece in our collection. So it's the Tamworth Borough Council Vaness letter book, and the letter book itself dates from 1888 to 1890. So during the period of 1877 to 1891, the Tamworth Borough Council clerk, Daniel F.W. Vaness, was council's administrator, and he was responsible for executing the council's decisions. His instructions were formalised by the ways of letters, and exact copies were kept in the book for council records. It's an example of what's called a pressed letter book, and James Watt is acknowledged as the inventor of the process in about 1780. So any letter that needed to be recorded was written in water-soluble ink, dampened, and then placed against the backside of one of the flimsy transparent pages of the book, and then pressed with a screw or cantilever press. Then a direct transfer of the letter was produced and could be read on the transparent paper the right way around. So the copy of this book include letters to tenders for the electric lighting plant, the successful tenderer, the appointment of council's first electrical engineer, and the clerk's replies to inquiries from other councils about electric lighting. These letters confirm the dates and peoples involved in the events. In 2019, the Vanessa letter book was added to the UNESCO Memory of the World Register, which we're pretty proud of. So our next object is one of our John Fowler steam engines. So this steam engine is number 7,586, and it dates to 1896. So not quite 1888, but as close as we could get, still working. So it's a double-acting semi-portable cross-compound under-type steam engine, which was built at the steam plough works of John Fowler and Co. in Leeds in the UK in March 1896. It's equipped with the Stephenson's link valve motion reverse mechanism. So with the exception of this reversing mechanism, it's exactly the same design as the 1888 engines, which came to Tamworth, but with a little bit more power, being at 16 nominal horsepower in lieu of the 12 nominal horsepower that the engines in 1888 would have been. And it developed 56 indicative horsepower, or about 42 kilowatts, at 145 rates per minute, with steam at 145 pounds per square inch. So when this engine is used in conjunction with our Mortstock boiler and the Worthington duplex boiler water pump, the steam engine becomes a whole working unit. So even though it looks like one big engine, it's actually made up of 3 different components, which are all vastly different. But you'll see that today. You've just missed out on the 9th of November when we had it running, but I'm sure you'll be able to come back and see it running at another time. So in our collection as well, we also have the last Australian telegram, which dates back to 1993. So it's a telegram/lettergram, and it's historically significant because it was the last one to be sent before Australia Post closed down in Australia. And that was at 5 p.m. on Thursday, the 30th of September in 1993. So this lettergram was sent from the Tamworth Post Office to the Tamworth Power Station Museum. So Australia's first telegraph service commenced between the Port of Williamstown and Melbourne on the 3rd of March, 1854. And it commenced in Tamworth on the 9th of November, a bit ironic there, in 1861. And in 1962, the TRESS system, which stands for Teleprinter Perforator Exchange Switching System, replaced the telegraphist. And in 1987, the teleprinter was replaced by the Message Switching Bureau, essentially a facsimile machine, which produced lettergrams. So with the use of computers and email, just the patronage of the lettergram service declined, which led to the closure in 1993. So yeah, just think how much further technology's come since 1993. We've now got our Dowsing Radiant 4 bulb heater, and this dates back to 1911. So it was designed by H.J. Dowsing, and it was a practical heater. From 1896 was the original, with carbon heating elements in an evacuated glass bulb in front of curb reflectors. So it's got 4 carbon element heating bulbs, 2 white and 2 red frosted, in a fairly large, approximately fan-shaped decorated brass and copper radiator. It's got shaped copper reflectors and 2 mounted brass switches in the front with a fixed cord connection. So the heater it's well made, really quite pretty, still very functional, but I think if you were running it today, your electricity bill would be a little bit high. But it's a great example of design and manufacturing skill hand in hand, and just showing how technology, the examples of technology that existed before the invention of a element wire. So it went bulb, and then we went into our elements. So yes, and you'll definitely see that at the museum this afternoon. We've now got our Maytag washing machine, and this dates back to 1929, and it has a very strong local story. So it was purchased by Mrs. Eliza Morris, who lived on 90 Carthage Street, from an agent, Jack Ether, who was from Moree. So Mrs. Morris ran a boarding house in Tamworth, and so if you can only imagine the sheets, towels, potentially clothes that she would have had to wash in any one week. So I think the advent of the washing machine was a godsend for her. So it was £60, which was really quite expensive at the time, but I think she had pretty strong justification. So she then passed the machine down to her daughter, Lorna Pepper, and then to her niece, Elizabeth Cork. And it was still in service in 1988 before it was donated to the museum. So this machine itself is a cast aluminium washing machine. It's a top loader with 4 legs. It's got quite a shallow washing basin area, which contains a gyrating agitator. It's a power wringer, which is on top of the machine, and it's got an electrical motor, which is just housed under the washing basin. So Maytag as a company was founded in 1893 in the US, and it originally produced farming equipment. And the first washing machines were actually designed and built for farms. And it was actually, quite interestingly, one of the few companies to make a profit through the Depression. So that's how much we needed washing machines. So that was the Tamworth Power Station. Quite a rich history, quite a long history, and a continued history. We'll now move on to the Australian Country Music Hall of Fame and why Tamworth again. So why has Tamworth become an icon for Australasian country music? So the birth of country music in Australia well and truly began in the 1920s. This was due to the uptake of radio in many homes across Australia, utilising radio as the primary form of entertainment. Music from Northern America through the likes of Jimmy Rogers, followed by Wilf Carter and Hank Snow in the 30s. And then in 1936, the father of Australian country music, Tex Morton, recorded his first hit, and country music started to take off across Australia. So Tex was a talented and versatile showman. He initially was very American influenced, but he quickly realised that people actually wanted to hear about local stories, about Australian stories. So he pioneered a genuine, original Australian writing, Australian style of country music, which had an enormous influence on aspiring young artists such as Slim Dusty and Buddy Williams. So Buddy Williams, who grew up on a dairy farm near Dorrigo, followed Tex into Columbia Studios in Sydney in 1939. A boy from the country writing and singing his own songs about his life in the Australian bush. And then we had our first Australian country girl to record solo, and that was Queenslander Shirley Toms. So she quickly became a favourite on the airwaves as well. Meanwhile, in Melbourne, a young singer and all-rounder entertainer started adding hillbilly music to his Hawaiian radio show. And in 1941, and ending 65 years later as one of Australia's best loved country music characters, we have Smokey Dawson entering the arena. The 1940s did bring war, but it also, as of 1946, on a small farm in Nulla Nulla Creek, Slim Dusty recorded the first of over 1,000 songs that he recorded over the next 55 years. He became one of our most successful and enduring entertainers, writing and singing about the land that he loved. In the late 1940s and 50s, country music boomed as new stars appeared, including many artists who would be famous for decades to come. Country was seen in cinema, in talent quest, showgrounds and town halls. It even had some of its own magazines, including Spurs. Country reigned on the radio with Tim McNamara, Reg Lindsay and the McKean sisters in Sydney, the Trailblazers in Melbourne, Bob Frickner in Adelaide, the Harmony Trail in Shepparton and the Lismore Radio Ranch Club. The Adventures of Smokey Dawson was heard on hundreds of radio stations all over Australia, and then later seen on TV. And it was also a comic. Circus and variety shows all had country acts too. country music took to the road in a tradition that continues today, with the Buddy Williams show as an example, then being joined by Slim Dusty show, the Rick and Thel show, and many, many others. The 1950s saw the consolidation of the Slim Dusty phenomenon. Sorry, I hate that word. Shouldn't have put it in here. Phenomenon. Anyway, you get what I mean. So launched by Australia's first major radio chart hit, the Gordon Parsons penned Pub With No Beer, and that was recorded and released by Slim in 1957. And it became the best-selling 78 record of all time. It was the only gold 78 and Australia's first international #1 hit at that time. In 1960, Johnny Ashcroft recorded the saga of a little boy lost near Guyra, topping charts nationwide as well. This was followed by the I've Been Everywhere Man, which was by Jeff Mack, and that's still being recorded all around the world today too. 1960s ushered in the microgroove long play stereo record and the Philips cassette, as well as new labels like RCA Festival, W&G, and specialty labels like Hadley and CMA. So a new crop of performers then appeared again, including the likes of Gene Stafford, the Singing Kettles, Johnny Heap, John McSweeney, Terry Gordon, and many others. The 60s, country took to television. So in 1964, the Country and Western Hour was produced in Adelaide, but in the 1960s, our country music was already reflecting some of the major changes that were reshaping popular music, rock and roll. In a relatively short time from the late 50s, rock and roll had supplanted other genres of popular music, dominating the city stages, radio, and TV. It drove country music into the back blocks where travelling shows started to struggle. In 1965, John Minson started an Australian country music program called Hoedown, and that was recorded on Tamworth Radio 2TM, playing predominantly Australian music. It was an immediate success with support from artists and fans alike, and in 1969, the people at 2TM recognised the potential and came up with the concept of Tamworth as Australia's country music capital. Tamworth had been proclaimed country music capital as of 1969, and in 1973, Radio 2TM staged the first Australasian Country Music Awards, so now our Golden Guitar Awards. So the first one presented the first of many of those Golden Guitar trophies, and the first one actually went to female artist Joy McKean, which is pretty incredible. As tens of thousands of fans flocked in January long weekend to Tamworth, 2TM started to add the Hands of Fame, Roll of Renown, Bluegrass Championships, buskers, and other events around the awards. The Tamworth Country Music Festival was beginning. Meanwhile, country music started to broaden its appeal. Artists like Suzanne Prentice, Gene Stafford, 1901, Saltbush, Anne Kirkpatrick, and Lindsay Butler all joined the established stars on the awards stage. And Nev Nichols packed the Texas Tavern in King's Cross, entertaining Americans who were on rest and retreat from Vietnam. And then bluegrass music took off, while trucking music hit the highway. New television shows, including John Williamson's Travelling Out West, and later in the decade, TV shows by Reg Lindsay and Johnny Chester. Elsewhere, new festivals like Wandong in Victoria were springing up. The 1980s saw a new wave of artists take to the stage and engage some of those younger artists. So that include the likes of John Williamson and Jewel and Arthur Blanche and Johnny Chester. In 1979, Star Maker Quest began, and that led the way for a whole new world of talent to begin. So that includes the likes of Lee Kernaghan, Keith Urban, Gina Jeffries, and Becky Cole, just to name a few. The 1980s also represented some losses in the industry as pioneers such as Tex Morden, Tim McNamara, Buddy Williams, and Alan Hawkins passed away. In the 90s, the young stars started to win some of those golden guitars, and the annual festival continues to draw audiences from across the globe. In 2003, sadly, Slim Dusty passed away, and that left an incredible legacy. So over the past 20 years, the industry continues to change and evolve. whilst continuing to tell stories through music. Tamworth is well and truly cemented as the country music capital. So the Australian Country Music Hall of Fame Museum represents all of this unique history in one building through the collection and its exhibits. The Australian Country Music Foundation, Inc. was established in Tamworth in 1991 and was the founder of the Australian Country Music Hall of Fame. So shortly known as the ACMF, it was formed to establish a permanent national country music archive and resource centre to service its vision. So it rented the heritage-listed Mechanics Institute Hall from the former Tamworth City Council, and the current museum collection was assembled following the amalgamation of two parent organisations, Heritage Hall and the ACMF, which were established by Tamworth-based volunteer groups in the early 1990s. So in 2002, recognising the archive's value to the Tamworth community, Tamworth City Council made overtures to the ACMF Inc. and Heritage Hall to consider amalgamation. In mid-2002, they officially joined forces, retaining the name Australian Country Music Foundation, along with the Mechanics Institute venue. The ACMF also acted as custodians for the Country Music Hands of Fame, the Broadcasters Hall of Fame, and the Eric Watson Literary Award. In 2015, the ACMF accepted an offer from Council to move into the iconic guitar-shaped building in Peel Street, which is where it's still located today, that was formerly the Visitor Information Centre. This allowed the museum to combine with the Walker Country Mile exhibit. So that was already located on the site after being relocated from the Tamworth Regional Entertainment Centre. So this display essentially takes you on a journey through Australian country music from the early days all the way through to the 2000s. And that continues to be a very popular exhibit on site today as well. In 2020, the ACMF came into agreement with Tamworth Regional Council to take over the administration of the Hall of Fame, with the volunteers continuing to provide their invaluable support as well and assist with the day-to-day running. And so, yeah, we're just continuing on, still working with the volunteers there and the collection as we continue. And we're actually just in the middle of redoing our temporary exhibition display at the moment. So apologies if anyone did want to get down there while they are here, but we are closed for the next couple of weeks while we work on some exciting things. So the Hall of Fame has a wide variety of objects within its collection that tell the story of Australasian country music, the artists, about their lives, and the history of the industry. So again, like the power station, I've worked to try and select 5 of interest. So yeah, we'll go through them. So first one we've got is Rodney Walker's one-man band. So it's a all-in-one literal one-man band. So Rodney is a very well-known name across Tamworth and within the country music industry. He's only just retired from performing for about 40 years. He was a firm favourite during the Country Music Festival when he would be seen wearing this instrument to perform up and down Peel Street. So it did start a bit smaller and then it just grew and grew and grew, but he would physically wear that down Peel Street performing in the middle of January in Tamworth's heat. So a bit of a legend there, I think. We've now got Rocky Cameron's 3-piece cowboy suit, and that dates to 1951. So Rocky Cameron was a child country music artist. His mother made the cowboy suit for him when he was about 8 years old. The cowboy hat that goes with it was also bought at the same time. His mum added some lace around the edge so that it would look a little bit different. He was only ever allowed to wear the cowboy suit and hat when he was performing, and he wore it for every performance until he was about 10 years old when he grew out of it. But during this time, his mother would add bits onto the legs of the pants as he grew taller. And you can kind of see at the very bottom there, just underneath that like light tan, that's all a completely different material that's just been sewn on. We've now got Gordon Parsons' fishing tackle box. So it's shaped like a fish, made out of wood and masonite with 6 compartments and 2 big eyes on the outside of the box. It's got a silver latch and a wooden handle and a jar inside containing some shark's teeth. The fish tackle box, it was made by Gordon himself, and when not touring or otherwise committed to his music, he loved nothing more than going fishing and drinking a cold beer. In his own words, I'd rather be fishing than doing anything else. We've now got Karen Lee's stage outfit. So this is a top and a skirt stage costume with redback spider decoration. So the outfit was worn by Karen Lee when she was on tour with the Redback band in the 1980s. So after the Redback on the Toilet Seat hit was produced by Hadley with artist Slim Newton out of their Tamworth recording studio, the hit reached large audience and brought fame to Slim. And so he created a whole myriad of spider items. There's some quite incredible things we have in the collection that are spider related. We've now also got digitised, with a big thank you to Prime 7 archive team who we've been working with, the museum's collection of AV material. So that includes shows such as Must Be Country, My Kind of Country, It's Country Today, and much more, as well as the footage from the Tamworth Country Music Awards over several decades. So probably starting in about the 80s all the way through to the 2000s, we have all of the award footage, which is pretty incredible. So yeah, Tamworth is a very unique city with a wide array of history it shares and the stories it can tell about the people who have lived here. What I have shared is honestly just a snippet of what can be seen across the region. So yeah, I just wanted to open up for any questions if anyone has them. Yeah?
Not so much a question, but a possible way that Central Coast might be able to help. We've got a collection called the Liz Allen collection, and it's photographs, performance photographs of practically every club artist that played in the 1960s through the 1980s.
Oh, wow.
In that, there's a lot of country artists. So if you want to, if someone wants to look through them,
Yeah,
then they're available to possibly add to your Hall of Fame collection.
No, that sounds wonderful. Thank you. I'll give you my card before I go. It's beautiful. Anything else? If not, we're all good. Beautiful. Well, thank you, guys. It was lovely to.
It should be online.
Thank you, Naomi. That was great. So if anyone does have any questions, they can just drop your line via email. Next up, we are a bit ahead of time, but hopefully Mark Petts is online.
Yes, yes, certainly am.
I need to stop sharing, so I think we can
Okay.
Sorry. It's not letting me accept. Okay.
Mark's going to talk about ScanPro and the advantages of using ScanPro.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just trying to get my presentation up, actually. Can you see that screen?
Yes.
Okay, terrific. Thank you. Look, thanks very much for having me today, guys. Basically, today we're going to talk about scanning microform, with in particular the ScanPro brand. A bit about myself. First up, I've been scanning microfilm and documents for over 15 years. I think sometimes I get sick of seeing microfilm, I tell you. I've seen everything that comes on microfilm. So basically, our company, IANZ, which stands for Imaging Australia New Zealand, was formed in 2020, right in the middle of COVID, which was unfortunate. But basically, I had been liaising with a company called ScamPro from the States for probably 10 years. I've known them. And they appointed us as sales and servicing licensee in that period. So so that's sort of how we got going with the microfilm side of things. We've got 2 branches. We've got one in Beechworth in Victoria, which I'm here today, and it's pouring rain. But and a digitisation centre in Bayswater in Melbourne. So we basically scan everything, including documents, microfilm in particular, books, large scale books up to A0 size, maps, large format maps, and just about anything else that you can digitize from that centre. With the ScamPro stuff, we've got over 100 technicians in Australia and New Zealand, which we offer ScamPro servicing right across the country. And a few clients in the last year that have acquired our equipment contain there. And I guess the important thing to note there is that not all organisations that have microfilm are libraries. So there's a lot of corporate clients that use microfilm a lot in their day-to-day business. So just a bit about microfilm, or microform as it's called. It's estimated that there are millions of individual pieces of microform in Australia, and only up to 40% that has been converted to digital format. So I've seen in my travels that these large organisations, particularly I was at the Commonwealth Bank just recently at their headquarters, and they had massive repository of microfilm and microfiche. It was unbelievable, and they didn't really know what was on it, but they know they have to scan it at some stage. So collections are held by all types of organisations, government, corporate, and not-for-profit. The types of microform that there are commonly microfiche and microfilm, both 16mm and 35mm. There's comfiche as well, which is computer-generated fiche. It looks a little bit different than your normal microfiche, which you can see at the picture at the top of the screen there. There's 3M cartridge film, so like a little cartridge that holds the film inside. There's aperture cards, and we happen to be scanning 17,000 aperture cards at the moment for a New South Wales Regional Council. There's micro opaques, jacketed fiche. Film also comes in duplex, so there's front and back. So you have 2 lines of images going across the film instead of just one. There's obviously positive film, which is white, and microcards. So many of you would have come across these types of microform in the past. There's all different types. Microfilm was made to last up to 500 years when they first invented microfilm. It was made of cellulose nitrate, acetate and polyester base. The early versions did, after a while, if not stored correctly, suffer vinegar syndrome, which is like a type of mold. Indeed, I was in Queensland recently, and there's a large repository up there which is suffering from that actual disease on the microfilm. there's a major increase in microfilm writing equipment throughout the world. So I was in Germany, and there's a large document scanner manufacturer who is actually seeing a massive uptick of countries and governments writing documents back to microfilm. So this is the case because they're sort of planning for, if there's a major disaster, they won't have electricity. So they're writing records back to microfilm as we speak. So countries like China and America. Obviously, the common ways for organisations to use microform is for research, both internal and external patrons. That's a common way with libraries, mostly. Capture purposes for local history and archive organisations. Technical data. So a lot of engineering firms have got microfiche in particular. Reproduction purposes, and commonly microform scanners and readers are used to view and scan this microform. And obviously, as technology increases, more and more functionality of these machines is being produced. And it's really in the last couple of years really got a gallop on in terms of what they can do. So introducing ScanPro. So ScanPro is the primary brand, I guess you'd say, across the world. It's the largest manufacturer of microfilm readers and scanners. And in Australia and New Zealand, we've got around 500 units in the field. Many of you may have come across the ScanPro in the past. It's produced from a company called E-Image Data out of Wisconsin in the States. So with the ScanPro, there's two types of models. So the first models are called the standard models, and there's three types of models there. So you've got the I-9500, the 3500, and the 2500. These are all used for research purposes mostly. So they're the ability to scan film, fish, aperture cards, all the different microform that we showed or we talked about previously, with one exception there. The I-9500 has a blip function. So you may or may not be aware that some microfilm has blips on it, which are little markers as to where the microfilm or at what place you are on the microfilm. So with the 9500, you can go to the exact place on the film that you want to research, and they're called blips. And the other two there, the 3500 and the 2500, are both research units. The differences between the two there, the 3500 is a 26.6 megapixel camera, and your 2500 is a 6.6 megapixel camera, and that's the only difference with them. The all-in-one units, they do everything the standard models do, except they capture as a automatic operation. So they become a production machine, the all-in-one unit. So it allows libraries and organisations to capture their collection automatically and digitise their whole collection if they want to. Next slide. Just computer requirements for the ScanPro. So the new ScanPro microfilm scanners use a USB 3 connection between the scanner and the PC. It's the fastest connection, and it future-proofs the technology. So the ScanPro really each unit has a life expectancy of 10 years or more. And part of that is the connectivity. The Scan Pro is compatible with versions 32 and 64-bit from Windows 7 to Windows 10 and 11, with all additions there. So your enterprise, professional, and home. The Firewire units that were produced from sort of early 2000s, or if not before, have been discontinued as of the 31st of December this year. So it gave users 20 years of use of these machines effectively, but they're being discontinued on the 31st. So if anyone there has got a Scan Pro that is a Firewire unit in your organisation, please feel free to reach out after this, and we can give you some advice and options on that. Okay, so Scan Pro and the factory believe in the ease of use of these machines. So it's not very technical to use it. Obviously, there's a lot of volunteers and people from the public that use these machines. So the ease of use is really one of the things that they've implemented into their software and the Scan Pro itself. You can see there that it's not really difficult to pick which one of the microforms you want to research or digitize. It's just a matter of clicking on those buttons to do that. And the other good thing about it's not a really good picture, but the other good thing about the Scan Pro software is that it is customizable. So you don't have to have all the buttons and all the menus that just confuse people. This can be as simple as possible, and it's very easy to change these menus around and customize it for your patrons. Indeed, some of the installations we've just had have scaled it right back to 1 or 2 buttons for people to press, so that it's really easy for them to use. Some of the features that Scan Pro have brought out, which is really the invent of new technology in the last couple of years, have been in particular around OCR capability. So now what you can do with the Scan Pros is you can actually, when you're viewing the image of a newspaper, for instance, on the machine, it actually puts an OCR overlay over that image whilst you're viewing it. And what that allows is for you to search the document via OCR on the fly. So that particular feature is called word search. And basically you put it might be Joe Blogs or Tamworth, for instance, in the newspaper, and it will take you straight to the instances where that word appears. The other thing there is spot edit, where you can actually, if it's a newspaper, you can go, for instance, you can go to a particular section of the newspaper and edit just that section. So a lot of newspapers have got photos and they come out dark on microfilm. So you can put a border around that particular image or photo and change the brightness and contrast of that and bring the picture out just in that section, and you can save it. Searchable multi-page PDF. So Scan Pro uses Abby. Abby is probably the best all-round OCR program in the world, and it will convert your images from microfilm into PDFs on a multi-page format, so multiple pages in one file, and make them searchable. And then there's another one there called Info Link. So basically, you've got an article up on the Scan Pro. You can click on any word in what you're viewing, and it will take you to a Wikipedia or a Google search of that particular word. And that's all around using the OCR capability that is now in these machines. Okay, so the real game changer for libraries was and organisations was the ability to now use these machines not only as a reader, a research mechanism, but also as a production type service now where they could digitize themselves rather than outsource. I'll try and play this video for you. It's a very American video. Can you still see that? I hope so.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, terrific. Okay. Okay. So one point there is that previous to this particular machine being able to scan microfilm and microfiche at that level, you're looking at $130,000 per machine to do it. So it was a real game changer that they made these smaller readers able to do this at 100 images a minute. And in fact, bureau services that we supply are now looking at these to replace these $130,000 machines, which do exactly the same. I've used these particular machines in our bureau service for a couple of years now, and they are sensational, very stable and very reliable. Okay, so as I said, it allows libraries to digitize whole collections up to 100 images per minute for microfilm, up to 100 images per minute with microfiche. It also, the all-in-one units allow you to move between frames in focus and in position from one frame to the next via the software, instead of using a manual carrier system where you had to move the film in underneath the camera with your hand. So it does it automatically, and it's always in the right position under the camera. So the video mentioned before that you can upgrade your current Scan Pros in the field. So these are the options down the bottom here. Obviously, there's new models, and we've got end of use specials at the moment running for new units in ScanPro. Firewire support. So as I mentioned before, these models are the ScanPro 2000 and before, and some 3000s. They will be phased out in December. We can still support these machines. If anyone's got them, you can reach out to us. The auto carrier. So if you've got a unit, an older unit, we can fit an auto carrier unit to an old machine and make it an automatic machine. All right, and that sort of is very affordable to do so with some machines. And then there's SPA membership, which is a bit of software add-on to any ScanPro. So if there's older ScanPros out there and you want to bring the software technology up to date, you can get an SPA membership. And what that does is add all this different functionality to it, including speed of scanning and all the things I spoke about, including the OCR stuff that we spoke about before. Okay, so that's an introduction to ScanPro and what it can do. So my details are there, obviously. Please feel free to reach out at any stage if you've got any questions or need further information on any of that stuff.
Anyone got any questions? How many people have a ScanPro?
We've got them.
So there's 500 units across Australia and New Zealand. So I would say most libraries have got ScanPros. Well, they've either had one or they've come across them. Very popular unit and easy to use, very reliable. Can I ask, has anyone got a ScanPro there?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there you go.
We've got 4 at Central Coast.
There you go. Okay, terrific. Yep. So and they predominantly would be used in research, I'm guessing.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, so there's some things there that maybe we can help you with in terms of upgrading your software in particular for those.
We have a couple of questions on chat.
Yeah, 2 of them around what are the implications for the ScanPro 2000s being discontinued, because there's at least a couple of people online who have those. So
Yes.
If you've got a ScanPro 2000, what do you do?
Okay, if it's a ScanPro 2000, it's going to be Firewire connected. So the problem is that Firewire is across the world discontinued on the 31st of December. So there's a couple of options for you. We can support the Firewire units for a 2-year period moving forward, and upgrade to a USB connectivity as well. But you'd sort of have to ask yourself, why would you upgrade an older machine like that? But certainly there's new units and there's the support that we offer to keep them running for you.
And there's another question. Is it possible to hire a ScanPro to do the digitising and then hand it back?
Yes, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah, so you can reach out to us and we can organise that.
And how much does that cost? Or it's fine if you don't want to say how much it costs. We'll need to contact you directly.
Yeah, just contact us direct. It depends on the collection and how long you'll need it, all of those factors.
Okay, and there's also a question about what is the cost of a new unit?
So the new units, so bearing in mind before that we said that there's two types. So there's the standard units and there's the all-in-one units. So the standard units are entry-level units, and they start from about $11,000 to $12,000, and your top 3,500 all-in-one unit is sort of in the range of 18,000.
Thank you.
No problem.
I have a couple of questions for those who have ScanPro and just wondering how your public find using them.
Yeah, see that. Yes, oh, is that for them? Yeah.
We don't have any problem.
No problems?
It's not much like a needy person. You may need to set it up for them, but it's pretty rare. Most people use them at state records or other places and know how to use them.
So Mark also mentioned that you can actually set up your use page and limit the functionalities that people can access. Have you done that, those who have ScanPro?
Default. We just use like default settings.
Like the factory default, how they've set it up, or?
Yeah, but we've
Okay.
got the instructions that you can change if you want to.
Yeah.
Just on a plastic sheet.
Yeah. And Jeff, you've done the same?
Yeah, when we got ours, we set them up, one of our tech team set them up, I think with Mark, to get basic functions on the front page and that. And it's very good over time. There's a few little tweaks that I've still got to make, or we've still got to make, but generally it works very well.
And you can do
And
those.
you're going to get the needy people no matter what machine you've got. But when I think back to the old Canon machines, which were good in their time, these are far superior. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, comments?
Just with the setup and the training. So if any of you need training or setup, help setting your ScanPro up to be more user effective, please reach out. We can do that too.
It's not a question in the chat.
The questions are really saying ours are older models, easy to use normally, if patrons in buying film, and yeah, they're finding that they might set people up, but then they're good to go.
Sorry, what was that? I just didn't quite catch that. Sorry.
Sorry, I was just repeating what was in the chat. So that's probably the easiest way for you to have a look at it, that it's people are commenting there about ease of use.
Right, okay. Yeah. I can't see that chat.
Okay, it's really people are saying it's easy to use, but they might set people up for the first time.
Yeah, so yeah, look, it's about setting it up, and what I usually do in the installation is meet with the users and also the management and say, righto, what would be the best buttons to put on each menu? How do you want it set up? And usually they'll have an idea of what they will and won't use from previous experience, and we set that up for them. But it's an ongoing thing as well. We set up and monitor our customers. So if you need help with that, please reach out.
Okay, thank you, Mark. That was great.
No worries. So now I can see the chat.
Okay.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
No worries. Thanks very much.
Okay, so we're a little bit ahead of time, but we'll still stick to the program, or do we want to?
Well, the other bit, Ross and Kim may not be here yet. I was going to suggest, if, unless Ross and Kim are here, we could maybe move to some of the general business, maybe the wider local studies and RAHS conference reports from those who
Okay, let's do
attended.
that. Okay.
Okay, so this is an opportunity for those, now I'm seeing on screen, this is Ellen, some people who presented at wider local studies. Now, wider local studies, and so it's great for people to get a brief conference, a brief feedback, and not just from me, because I co-organised it. Wider local studies is a national collaboration in local studies, hence wider local studies. And this year we had planning from almost every state and territory and presenters from every state and territory. Highlights for me were the cataloguing sessions from Northern Territory libraries, which was how to catalogue material by Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. I thought that was very, very helpful, and that had a lot of follow-up questions and comments. Sorry, do you want to do something on?
Yeah, I just want to put the screen up so people can, and I can't quite see.
Sorry, I can do that.
Sorry, show me what to do. Oh, up there. Sorry, everyone. Perfect. Okay.
And so that was probably one of the highlights for me, but there were also some good accounts from different libraries talking about things. Great presentations from Megan Crook, who was here talking about oral history. Angela Pippin presented on the work she's been doing on a bilingual local studies program in English and Mandarin. We also had North Sydney staff presenting on their Mapping Queer North Sydney project. But what I did like, it was great to hear the New South Wales people presenting, but it was also great to have the opportunity to hear from other states and territories and to hear that they've got the same issues. So, you know, Queensland's doing some oral histories around surfers. That's a good thing to do. That there's little collecting around culturally linguistic diverse people. That's not good. No one's kind of leading from the front on that one anywhere in Australia, which is disappointing. Queensland is collectively doing some interesting work around collection plans. And I'll put the link for where, if you didn't catch it earlier in the year, you can go and watch the video, not today, but at another time. I actually found it really interesting, but I admit there's self-interest in that because I helped coordinate it, because I actually think it's valuable for New South Wales people to hear perspectives from other states and territories. I also think it's valuable for other states and territories to hear perspectives from New South Wales. Planning is starting for that at the present, and so thank you for those who voted on the which June dates. We're trying to organise, we've got to catch up organised in a few weeks' time, but at present it's difficult to get all state and territories involved, again, because they've got their own issues going on, people have changed jobs, etc. So at this point, I'm hoping it takes place next year, but it may not be every state and territory involved because everyone doesn't quite have the same capacity. But I liked it because I missed having a national perspective on this. And I think it's helpful because it draws things together. Just as like this morning, we were hearing about the intense local and frankly very fascinating story of the Tamworth Power Station and the country music collecting. So I think it's helpful to kind of join the dots across the country and hear different things, and who's doing things with podcasts, and Alice Springs is working with their Aboriginal community. They're not the only place in Australia that has Aboriginal people living in their community, and fortunately we'll be hearing from Aboriginal people later today, and it's highlighting the importance of local studies. So I like that it reminded me as well as other people of the importance of this broader perspective. And to also go, there are people in other states and territories that people in New South Wales can ask questions of. That it's like, oh, you did this interesting thing around surfing and oral history and you've got the photographs in, and okay, I'm looking at this project, no, can we have a chat? So I like to because of that big picture perspective. Yes, so would anyone else like to comment on why the local studies, given that I'm speaking from a position of extreme self-interest?
Well, I just would like to make a comment that every time it's held, you notice how differently the states operate. All the states have a different approach, and it's always really useful because you then look at it and think, oh, I should try that approach. And it seems like there are unique activities and unique ways of doing things throughout various states, which I find fascinating. So it's a really worthwhile little conference to attend. And it's over the 2 days, which makes it much easier for more people to participate in at least half a day. So anyone here who presented?
There are a couple of people online who presented that,
Angela?
but it's fine if they don't want to talk about it. That'd be nice.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, excellent, excellent. I'm just having a bit of trouble with the audio here. I had actually pre-recorded my presentation because I was going to be on leave at the time. But I didn't receive any feedback, any follow-up questions from the presentation, which was a bit disappointing.
Oh, great. I'm sorry about that, Angela.
Oh, well, no, I mean, you can't, I mean, it's just interesting that, I mean, I was hoping that there would be some follow-up questions, but I didn't receive any.
Well, maybe the historical. Any other comments or?
I enjoyed it. I always enjoy any of the things that we have. I liked that because there was a much broader picture of things, and even though it may not be things that I'm covering, it does still give you ideas about something else that you might be able to use something in a different perspective.
Definitely.
I did enjoy your talk. I'm sorry I didn't comment, but that's unfortunate because if it's recorded, maybe you're not seeing the live chat, Angela. But yeah, I always enjoy the looking at a broad picture rather than just what we do in New South Wales. Yeah.
Well, maybe we hear about the Australian historical.
Yeah, anyone attended the RAHS conference? They had a really good agenda here.
Can anyone hear me? Oh,
Yes.
hi, yes, I attended. There were a couple of other people who came along who were at the meeting today as well. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a really great conference. I presented on the Goulburn Mulwaree Library Oral History project and what we're up to, how we're going, and I think that went pretty well. I've had some follow-up emails and questions from people who were there at the time, so they seemed very engaged, which was good. And all the other presentations were diverse and interesting. And I just had a really great time. I really enjoyed it. And I think the mix of what's happening in museums and what's happening with local history groups was also really interesting and a really good way to network and engage with other people doing slightly different things. Yeah.
I also attended. It's Alison Wishart from, where am I from? Bayside Council. And I can attest that Fran's presentation was the perfect presentation. It was so good and so spot on and so interesting. So I was surprised by how relevant the RAHS conference was to me as a local studies, local history librarian and practitioner. So I would recommend thinking about it as a professional development opportunity. It was held in a regional area. It was good to see bits of Wagga Wagga and to see their museum and their library and their new museum, which council has funded, which is amazing. The next conference will be held at Campbelltown. So perhaps a little bit more accessible for Sydney peeps, but not, well, actually, I really enjoyed getting to know, spending time in Wagga Wagga as well. Let's put it, yeah.
And buying some shoes, Alison, I do
Yes,
believe.
all right. Yes, I might have bought some shoes, yes.
Yeah, so I can add a few things. This is Angela from RIDE, but I wasn't representing RIDE. I'm on the organising committee of the conference with the Royal Australian Historical Society. I really loved getting back face to face because I think it is just so useful to be able to do all of that networking. There was a mixture of academic and what I'd say more practical papers. I think Bruce Penney, who was the keynote speaker, he got people thinking by kind of saying, stop writing academic papers and get content on YouTube, which was interesting for some people. There was an interesting one by Wayne Doubleday, Digitisation. Is it really the panacea we've been searching for? And I think, again, that was really thought-provoking because in his experience, there are people who will look at his records and say, well, if we spend the money and we digitize all of this, we can get rid of the original records and everything will be fine. And so he kind of, tempered that. Fran and Alison's section on oral history was really, really excellent. There was a third speaker there called Graham Shirley. And I think what I remember about Alison's in particular was that as an interviewer, you have to look after your own mental health because sometimes you can be hearing quite troubling things that you might not have heard, or it might trigger something in you. So it was really good. And as Alison said, it's going to be in Campbelltown next year. The president of the Campbelltown Historical Society is Stephen Coppens, who many of you will remember was formerly the local studies librarian at Holroyd. So it's going to be a really good conference at Campbelltown, and I can't wait.
Are you still on the organising committee, Angela?
Yes, yes. Yes.
One of the things they never put out the agenda until quite late.
Yep, there's a reason for that because that's normally it's still being worked on.
Even like a draft one, because to get for me to get permission, all the paperwork that we have to go through, and if there's just a draft one that's got the keynote speaker and a couple of other things, it makes it easier to get the permission.
Yeah, look, I completely agree, and that will be feedback I will take back in the same way as at the conference they give out certificates of achievement to people who have been associated with historical societies and have done things. But again, the problem with that is that the nominations for that close in the middle of September and the conference is in October. So if you actually want people to come along to receive their certificates, you've got to give them more time to prepare. So I take that point on, and I think it's absolutely right. And the earlier we can get information out there, then the better it will be for people to be able to plan. Thank you.
Any other conferences that people have been to of relevance to local studies?
Not conferences, but I've been doing those Trove in 20-minute things. I suppose people are doing those when they can. Some of those have been quite helpful through the National Library.
Any others?
There was the return, which was about
repatriating items from the UK to the Caribbean. Was not too long ago, I think I went online and it was in water. So setting up a new museum and items were taken from the UK and brought back there. So that's really good. I'm sure it's online if you can try and find where it is. So that was really, really cool.
And who did that?
I think it would have been the council, because they were sort of part of negotiating that stuff being moved back, and yeah, it was great to hear how that process worked, and yeah, all the things behind that. Lovely.
I went, Alison from Bayside again. I went to a one-day symposium at the Chow Chak Wing Museum last week called the Knowledgeable Object Symposium. So it's basically about how do we use museum objects or local studies objects for raising awareness and teaching and education purposes. And it gave a really good contrast between how to best use a digital version of an object versus the physical object, and talked about the ability to zoom in on, of course, on a photograph, which gives the photograph much more resonance for people than looking at a very tiny, photo in physical form. So that's one of the advantages of the digital version in that case. But then, of course, with the physical version, you've got all of the texture and the weight and all those sensory things that you can't get from a digitized version. And then there were two presenters, one from the State Library of New South Wales, actually, Ellen, two of your educators, and then one from a boys' high school who talked about how they use objects in their education sessions. And I found it really useful because I haven't got an education background. So to hear how they build up the knowledge with the object, and particularly how they get the kids to engage with an object and work out what it is, and to do what they call deep observation, which basically just means, spending a lot of time looking at it, thinking about it, how to handle it properly, all of that. So I'd be happy to share my notes with people if you do have an opportunity to use objects in a teaching way in the future. I came away thinking, oh, they're fabulous ideas, and I'd love to make time in my work to be able to do that more, particularly with school groups, I think. But it's just a time management factor, which I see we're talking about later on today.
That might be good, something for our next meeting.
Yes, that's actually a good idea. If that was Ellen speaking, yeah.
It was Michelle, but it's still a good idea.
Okay, thank you. If you can share that link with the group later, that'd be great. Okay, thank you, everyone. It's now morning tea time, and we'll be back at 11:15 for Roz's talk, and then doing earlier. And who will be talking about sorry, who will be talking about their Aboriginal oral history program. So thank you.
Thank you. I'll just put up our presentation, so give me a second. Share screen. Hopefully, if I go, thank you. Where is it?
It's Zoom, so it's.
We can see it.
You can see it?
Oh,
okay. I'm just like, we've got so many things over the top of things. So I'm just like, I can't find where it is. From the beginning.
Perfect.
Ooh. Can you guys see that better now?
Yep.
Yep. Okay, cool. Okay, so let me just move this tab now because I've got so many tabs things open up. So I'm Roz Thompson. I'm the acting Community Partnerships Coordinator for Muswellbrook Shire Council, and I've got Kim and Waring here with me. Hi. Kim's the Manager of Community Services. We've also got Lorraine. Is Nikita in there too, or is it just you, Lorraine?
No, Makisha's you too. I'm here.
Okay. Hi. So we've got Lorraine and Makisha from Two Rivers as well, who's going to be presenting with us on this project. So that is us. So before we start, Muswell Shire Council would like to respectfully acknowledge the local Aboriginal people who are the traditional owners and custodians of this land. Just a warning that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people should be aware that this presentation contains images, voices, names, and deceased persons in photographs, films, audio recordings, and printed material. So a bit of the overview of the project. So we've got the history, the oral history project, the funding, ICIP project consultation, the exhibition, the impacts of the project, and the end project. So history of why we got started on this project is, so in 1999, Muswell Shire Council established their Aboriginal Reconciliation Committee, which has been going on for a very long time.
Still operating, and it has representatives from all the community, from particularly the Indigenous community, as well as council representatives as well.
Next. So did you want to talk about this a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So when we formed the Aboriginal Reconciliation Committee, it has a terms of reference, which certainly the overall goal is about pursuing reconciliation in the community. On its journey, it's done various projects which have been really great for the community, and certainly council views a lot of these projects as some of their healing projects. So Wannon Thambaran was one of the very first projects that we did as a committee, and it's the history of the Aboriginal and European contact in Muswellbrook and the Upper Hunter Valley. So it's a version of that history, and that's a compilation of stories of people that lived in our community, as well as some research sitting behind it, which we engaged Umilico at that point, which is with University of Newcastle. And it sits in our library, and it also sits in the State Library as well.
So some of you will have there is a couple of copies I sent down, so you guys can have a look through when you get a chance. So in 2000, actually it was probably before that, wasn't it?
Yeah, a little bit more.
Yeah, the Napawati Aboriginal Women's Group engaged the Muswell Shire Council to develop an oral history project. So they identified the needs in the community, and they wanted to tell their stories from their perspective. So for a while it was we had a meeting with them, but then we left it with them because they kind of wanted to drive this. And then a few years later, they came back to us and said, no, we actually would really like your help with part of the reconciliation committee. So the oral history project obviously is compiled stories and life experience of local Aboriginal people. The end product was both a digital and paper recording. So that includes videos, transcripts, and a book as well. That's everything, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep. The project will, sorry.
Might be an
no, I think it might be an upgrade, yep. The project allowed the Aboriginal people to tell their stories from their perspective, but not influencing by existing written history that is often written from the perspective of non-Aboriginal people. So the project anticipated 180 minutes worth of interviews with a minimum of 20. So we actually had 19 all up. So we had a few people pull out of the project throughout the time, but I'll get into that part a bit more later. So the final project was a 5-minute video, and we had a coffee table book which had a portrait of the participant and 300 words from their transcript that they approved. We printed 100 copies of the book, but ended up having to redo another run as well, because they just
Went quick.
yeah, they did. They went like hotcakes. Yep. The exhibition of the project. So they wanted to have an exhibition as well to share their stories throughout the local community, but also had a lot of family members and different people coming through the area have a look at their stories as well. The coffee table book was shared through local schools, libraries, New South Wales State Library, and now you guys have it as well, or some of you. So in 2016-17, Muswellbrook Shire Council was invited to a Mac Energy, so the Mac Energy ACDF, so Aboriginal Community Development Fund meeting, where they presented their sorry, I probably should just look at they presented their expression of interest, and the EOI was successful, and a partnership agreement was signed in 2017. The funding was received for the project to be developed in 2017 as well. So that was a very big thing, because
and the project was very ground up. So the community developed the idea, they brought it to Reconciliation Committee, and the Reconciliation Committee, that whole committee, developed what they wanted the project to look like, how they wanted to do the interviews, and how important that was. So the expression of interest was put to, we call it the Mac Energy ACDF fund, and because that was the funding body that was around at the time. And the ACDF fund is managed by representatives of the local Aboriginal community as well.
Yeah, so you've got representatives from Mac Energy, but most of them are actually from the Aboriginal community from Muswellbrook and Singleton, I believe. So funding in the budget. So obviously we just said that Mac Energy was our funding body for this. We received $111,000 for this project. And with that, that included catering, consultation, interviewees, production, interview catalogues, project management, and the project management. And Muswellbrook Shire Council was in kind and did all the administration work as well. So what else we got in here? So yep, that's it. So the books in the exhibition launch. So the Indigenous cultural and intellectual property. With the participants who partake in this oral history project, they're involved in all stages of the project, so from the start to the finish. The participants remain the sole owners of their stories, so we don't actually own any of the stories. That's all theirs, because that's their stories, not ours. And the participants had the opportunity to change their mind at any stage during the process. So if, for example, which we had during this time as well, we might have had someone do an interview, get recorded, and then they changed their mind because they just felt that it wasn't right at that time that they told their story. So that was completely removed. All the information was deleted, so that way it wasn't actually shared out at any time. It was all up to that individual's
discretion of what they do.
Yeah, sorry, I'm trying to think of words. I'm a bit nervous. I don't normally do like presentation.
Lorraine, did you want to speak? And Makisha, did you want to speak a little bit around that gathering of information?
Sure. So participants sign an agreement, an entry agreement with us, that we did it, and that agreement detailed to them that they would be paid for their contribution, whether they kept their contribution out or removed their contribution, and they had that right at any stage. So our process was to be a consultation advance, which Rosie will talk about, but then we did one-on-one pre-production, and we sat and had conversations. One of the advantages with us doing it was that we had long-term relationships with the community down there, so they knew us, and a lot of people, like, they come up to here to visit, so we knew who they were and they trusted us. So we made a commitment that they would be involved at all stages through. So when we transcribed the videos, we did the videos, they would come back and they were transcribed. Unlike most consultants and organisations that will send it offshore or run it through a machine, we didn't do that. We actually physically transcribed every word. I didn't, Makisha and Ros did. And the reason that we did that, because I was really nervous about sending it offshore or sending it to a system where it could then be leaked, because there are some pretty tough stories in this. So once it was transcribed, it was actually sent back to the participants, and they could sign off and they could choose to remove parts, to change parts, or to withdraw altogether. And we had 2 that withdrew altogether, and so then they were given the option of, do you just want us to delete it, or do you want us to save it on a file and send it down to you so you've always got a copy of it? It was all a negotiation process, but it did come with a level of trust, because even though we assured them we would delete it off our system, they had to trust that we would do that, because that is our servers, and we honoured that trust, obviously, and deleted it. So we actually have no evidence of that now at all. We deleted their film recordings, and we deleted all the transcribing of that. But it was always at the participant's discretion. When the book was done, it went down to sign off. Every person had opportunity at any stage to pull out for any reason, and sometimes they had shared such stuff that was so deeply personal that then they come back and said, "I'm just not confident my family would want me to share the story now." Like, that's fine. That's what it's here for. So yeah.
Thanks,
Anything?
Brian.
That's all right.
Sorry, I'll get back to you at some stage, I promise. So the project consultation. So in 2018, the Aboriginal Reconciliation Committee established the Oral History Reference Group. Did you want to speak any more on that one?
The reference group sat off the Reconciliation Committee, so it was empowered to develop the project. So, and certainly that level of trust, like Lorraine's just talking about, that the community came together to develop a project, and that what in our governance structure, it then those minutes went to the Reconciliation Committee, which then went to council. So all the way we had a councillor rep who was the link between all those levels, and it was there that we established the terms of reference for that committee, and for the reference group rather, and that solely was to develop the project and engage an Indigenous consultant to carry out the project management of the project. On the way, we certainly, and this is a bit of a plug for libraries, because you were really instrumental in that as well, because part of the reference group, we asked our local Muswellbrook Library Services to come on as well. So we had a rep who came on there, and they provided the really good link for us in regards to you know, the Trove standards, to link it back to Trove, because that was really important to us to make sure it had that longevity and would remain a story in the community. About storage at those times, years ago, you know, that concept of storing stories and how you go about that, and document keeping. So it was really important. And at some point, the State Library reached out to us as well, which I noticed Ellen is on. And Ellen, I've got a 5-year-old email from you where you inquired about the project. So thank you for keeping with us. And it was great, because we used the State Library's oral history resource to develop our consultants brief, which, you know, that's how we caught Two Rivers. And then Annie from the State Library Indigenous Services Group put our brief right through their network to attract consultants who might be interested in the project.
So the Aboriginal History Reference Group actually had a terms of reference as well. Do you want to talk about more?
Yeah, so I just briefly spoke about that. So we can certainly make all these slides available to you if you like. But as we said earlier, it built on the Wannon Thambaran stories. It was really about educating and preserving the Aboriginal cultural knowledge through digital recording. And this goes with our document of reconciliation that Council has. So this was just this was a project that really is embedded in our planning and our strategic direction of where we go with Indigenous communities. So you're certainly more than welcome to have a copy of that later.
So in 2018, the request for quotation for the project went out. So we had 7 consultants express their interest, which Two Rivers attained the quotation for that one, which also was the only Aboriginal organisation to put their hand up and say that they would love to be a part of this program. And we thought that it's more important to actually have a Aboriginal consultation group go out into community, because obviously they understand the cultural barriers and protocols and things like that than anyone else really.
And we had when we put the request for quotation out, as you know, with majority of you are with councils, it's quite, the procurement process is quite stringent, and we needed to have criteria. So there was criteria, there was process. We needed to keep that balance for not to, money the process, I suppose, like to stifle it in any way, but we had to keep the governance level of council's procurement process balanced with what community needed as well. And certainly, as Ros said, Two Rivers were the only Indigenous owned organisation that applied. We did have a couple who had Indigenous people sitting in the organisation, but like Ros said, it was more important to us that regional connection, and Two Rivers came with the skills and ability to do it. They by far the best applicants. So that's where we first engaged Two Rivers.
And like Lorraine was saying as well, she already had connections in the community as well. So some of these other organisations weren't actually from the area. We had, I think we had one from Melbourne and things like that. So it was having someone so close and also having already that connection with the community. It was a very vital part of the program or the project. So I actually came onto this project in 2018 when I was working at the Aboriginal the Wanneroo Local Aboriginal Land Council. I was actually an admin person there at the time, so I met Lorraine and
Wade. No, it's Wade. Makisha didn't come. No, it was Wade. Wade and I come down.
Yeah, there we go. I'm like, I don't think I was Makisha. I think I met her later, but yeah. So I came on that project. I wasn't actually part of the reconciliation committee, so I didn't know the full side of that at the start. We had other reps from the Land Council be a part of that committee. So when I came on, I was very excited to have all this happening. But yeah, so I've kind of been from the start of the project, but not really. I kind of came in halfway, I guess. But we had community consultations held at the Land Council. So we had a few community members come in and discuss about the project and what, saying that they wanted to be involved and what they had to do and things. And then in late
Lorraine, do you want to talk about that as well, because you were really active in that process?
Yeah, I would like to talk about it because I think it's important that people don't think that we could just go to one location, run a community consultation session. It so didn't happen like that. We were also down there for the multicultural spectacular at the time. And so I remember one of our consultation sessions was at the showground, and we put Mornington at the showground. We would just come down, we would camp there. And so we had a caravan set up there, my husband and I. Makisha actually was still at Walgett at this stage, so she wasn't with us. And people would come down and we'd have nibblies or have a good cake and have a conversation, because consultation in our eyes isn't just a one dimension thing. And so people would say to us, can you come and have a cup of tea with us? So we would drive there. Now at that stage I was living in Ashford, so I wasn't even in Tamworth then, I was back up there, and we would drive the 9 hours down and we'd sit there and have a cup of tea. Or we also held a session at one of the clubs, I think. I'm sure that was for this project. We had a number of different avenues where people could consult with us and made sure that it just wasn't, you have to come on this day. And I distinctly remember meeting Daphne, and it was at the sitting under our awning at the caravan at the showground, and sitting there having a cup of tea and talking about what this looks like and how that progresses forward. And then we had people that we had long-term relationships, like Uncle Charlie. Well, I want to come and talk to you about it. And he's like, oh no, I'll just do it every time. Like, I trust you, we'll just do it. So I think it's really important that you don't have just one level of consultation, that you have to provide avenues that everyone can access, because especially around numeracy and literacy issues, if you are advertising in one way and not picking up the phone, and that's where Rosal's role at the land council is instrumental, because phone numbers change. Funnily enough, I find that Facebook is a great tool to contact people because they don't change their Facebook all that often. So emails and phone numbers would change, but we could ring Rosie and say, I can't find this person, and she would track them down for me down there and yeah, make that link for us. And it's also doing little things that wasn't part of this project, it was another project, but when we built the relationships was the elders had said to us at the showground, oh, we killed for a rabbit stew, and Rosie, you'll probably remember this, they're like, we killed for a rabbit stew, and we were on the farm at Ashford. So we actually caught rabbit and took it down there, and Auntie Dean was so excited. And I'm like, here's your rabbit. And she's like, have you cooked it? I'm like, oh, no, I don't know how to cook rabbit. So we had this rabbit, skinned rabbit there, which no one knew how to cook. So the CEO of the land cats at the time comes and I'll cook it. So he went and made rabbit stew for the community. It's those little kind of things, not that I asked you to go out and shoot rabbits, but it's those type of little things that build trust in the community. And they just were so excited then that they had rabbit stew because they hadn't had pigs. And then it brought back memories for them. So then when we were in the interviews, they're like, when we had that at that event, it reminded us of this. We also went down to Musselbrook, have a fantastic native dates in the park. And I think this is our first year we've missed it in a long time. We try to get down there every year. And it's just a great way to go down and have conversations with the community. We don't set up a stall or anything, we just walk around to the community. And that's part of our engagement with the community. Thanks, Rosie.
Yes, I do remember that rabbit stew. I was like horrified. I'm vegetarian, so when it was coming in, I'm like, oh my God. So in late 2000, well, I think it was mid to late 2018, the interview started with the participants. So you, Lorraine, you went to Singleton and Musselbrook, didn't you?
Yeah, we filmed in both Singleton and Musselbrook, and we filmed several times. One of those times we stayed at the caravan, we stayed at the showground. We didn't take our caravan with us and stayed down there. So we filmed at the conservatory in Musselbrook, and we also filmed at the library in Singleton. And then we had another batch to do, and so we went down and visited other locations. Just remembering that even though in 2018 it wasn't here yet, but the bulk of the recording and the finalising hit when COVID hit. So we were so lucky that our recording had all that finished. There were there was some families in the community that were instrumental, and we wanted them involved in the process. We had a lot of trouble getting access because of their work commitments. So we took a film crew 3 times. We drove a film crew down to Musselbrook, and 3 times we drove home empty-handed. And 2 of those times my film crew was from Sydney. So in the end, we had to make a call because then COVID hit, and we're like, I can't keep sending them back. And when I was reflecting on this last night, I was thinking, I also remember sitting in my car at the end of White House Lane, 3 White House Lane, and ringing Kim and saying, Kim, I'm meant to be coming to your meeting, but you're going into lockdown today, or we're going into lockdown, or we've got someone sick. And I think there were 3 times when we were in our car on the way down and had to stop and turn around and come back because of COVID. So it really threw a spanner in the works. But we did make it work in the end. But that consultation process was so important to it, and the recording was not a rush situation. And I am going to ask Kim and Ros whether I'd actually tell this story, but I think I will, because I'm all about being transparent and honest. And we have a lot of elders there, and they've all met my husband, and anyone that knows my husband, he's a bit rough and ready, he's a country boy. And we were down there, and a couple of the fellas were really nervous. And Uncle Gary took him for a drive, and Uncle Gary said, can we go to the pub? And I was like, yeah, we can go to the pub. And so they went to the pub and had a beer, and then they come back and recorded. And then someone said, getting bored in the car. And I don't promote alcohol at work at all, or in community at all, because I don't drink myself. But he couldn't speak, and he said, just don't have a little nip of port, I'll be right. And that's what they did. And it was their choice. They're, 60 or 70-year-old men, I don't know how old they are, but that's what gave them the confidence to be able to open up, because they don't share stories. They've never been allowed to. So to now have that relationship, and they didn't do it with me, they went with my husband, and they went off to the pub and had lunch and come back, and now they ring us and say, oh, you going to a rodeo, you have to have a cup of tea and make home, you need a shower, because they're just lifelong friends now. And so the recording process, we didn't rush it. We had catering set up, so we'd come in and have a cup of tea or have something to eat, and then we'd go in and record, and then we could have as many breaks as we needed to. And there were times with some of the stories where it was so incredibly heartbreaking that we had to pull time and go, we just need a time out for a minute. And one time I had an elder there and she was telling a story and she had tears in her eyes and I'm crying and we're both sitting there crying. And I just said to Tim, who was recording, you're going to have to pull up. You're like, you're not going to get a single thing through our sound because we can't stop talking. But it was something that we'd spoken to Kim and Jacinta about early in the piece was that this would create some, bring up some old memories and create some trauma. So we actually had a trauma crew on standby, like a mental health professional on standby, that we could either call in or we could make a call to them to say we need to do a referral through because it brings up a lot of old memories in this process. We didn't actually have to use it, but we made sure we had that in place. The other thing we tried to do, because we wanted all the elders to feel really special, but we weren't able to pull it off, and I can't quite remember what happened, but we wanted to have someone there to do their hair and makeup if they wanted that done, so that they felt beautiful going in and more confident. And I can't exactly remember why that didn't go ahead, but that's, I think, would have been another beautiful element to it, if we'd have been able to do that, to provide them with the confidence when they come in and speak. So, yeah. Right, Rosie?
Yep, I'm all good. Add to this as well. So Muswellbrook Shire Council, because the Wanneroo Local Aboriginal Land Council boundaries don't just extend to Muswellbrook, we actually extended that out to the whole. There was no boundaries really to this project. Anybody who wanted to be a part of it, they actually could. So we had people from Scone, Aberdeen, Muswellbrook, Singleton. I think that was a Scone, wasn't it? From Scone? Yeah. So people from different shires actually were involved in this project because we can't just limit that to just our shire, because we've got so many community members around here that are involved in all the shires that we can't just eliminate anybody. So we open that up to everybody. So in 2019, 2020, community consultation and interviews continued. In 2020, the interviews concluded and the In Our Own Words project was being finalised. So the videos and coffee table books were being finalised as well and ready for the exhibition launch. In 2021, we had the In Our Own Words exhibition, which was held at the Muswellbrook Regional Arts Centre. But unfortunately, due to COVID, so we originally planned to have the opening in 2020, but we were in lockdown restrictions. So when we were able to actually go back out in 2021, which was, I think, January, we were still limited of how many people could actually attend. But we did have 50 people attend on the day, and it was pretty magical. We had some local dancers come in. So we had I think there were two families actually come in. So we had kids and their parents dance. We had Uncle Glenn Morris, who is actually part of the project as well. He done a brushing down ceremony for us at the start as well. We had some speakers as well throughout the time discussing the project, but also had the family members as well. So we had a few people who brought their family along as well, who could be a part of that project, which was very special.
Can I just add something onto there, Rosie, as well? When we talk about the importance of a project like this, that exhibition showed one of the really important reasons why it went through. We had a lot of sorry business through this process. And there were two people that are in this that didn't even get to the exhibition, that we lost just before the exhibition. And so part of the process was getting permission from the family to still publish, and our protocols around that, saying what can we post and what can't we post. We did all that in the start with each participant, whether they were 19 or 9, so we have that discussion with them, who do we go to if something happens, etc. but the exhibition was held not long after one of the elders had passed away, and I saw her husband there, and I said, "I'm so sorry." And he said, "I'm just so glad that I'm here to do this, and I'm so glad that her story is captured and it's now preserved forever." So if people have a doubt why you do oral history, talk to people that have lost someone, because the stories are gone once they're gone. So we've now got this forever for their family. And then we actually had the portraits framed and sent portraits down to the family to say thank you for their contribution to the community. And that was sort of just something we could do, so because through COVID, so we couldn't actually go to the funeral, but we could actually acknowledge their contribution through a small gesture like that. Thanks, Roz.
Thank you. I was getting to that part.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. You've kind of like said a lot anyway, so that's okay. That's good. So with the exhibition, we had an increase of visitors during the exhibition. So the exhibition ran from it was
probably 6 to 8 weeks. It ran for a bit longer.
It was from January through to May.
Oh, okay, good, excellent.
I think it was.
So,
yeah.
And what's great about, we're lucky because this council, and we have the gallery as well, so that's where we put it. And if you look at that photo, that was like a little alcove that was set up, which has all the stories that were played all the time. And to the right of that is the gallery, which Lorraine was just referring, with all the portraits and the QR codes with people's stories in it. So it was a really powerful thing, and the gallery staff have commented that there was an incredible increase in traffic into the gallery in that period, like Roz said, over those months, because family took the time just to come and sit and listen, and particularly people that were accessing the gallery weren't people that would normally come and see an exhibition. They were coming because their stories of their loved ones or them were on the wall and were being shared for everyone to see and hear.
Yeah, and we had a lot of people returning as well to the exhibition just to sit down and watch. So we did actually have some chairs. So in that little alcove where you see you've got Uncle Charlie sitting there, that's actually his video playing. So that would be, it played every single person's video throughout that time frame. It was just on a loop, so that way it just continued going. And we had some chairs down so people could actually sit down and watch the videos. But like Kim was saying as well, we had a QR code so people could actually get it up on their phone and watch the videos that way as well. So in the back of the book that of the oral history book that you have, or some of you might have, there's actually a QR code in the back which is linked to the website where all the videos have actually played. But yeah, it was a very, very special. So when we had the portraits plus their 300 words and a QR code on the wall. So when people came in, they could actually read their stories, listen to their videos. And yeah, we had 19 participants, so that was a lot of stories to get through, and some of them were actually quite emotional. I get emotional just thinking about them. So the next one is the impacts on the project. So this is where I was, so we had some participants pull out of the project, as we were talking about before. And we also had some members who were a bit hard to contact to partake in the project as well. So, and that was mainly due to, like, you know, understanding cultural protocols, and the barriers around that. We also had 3 elders pass throughout the completion of the project. So we had some pass before the project was finished. We had, but we managed to get his stories and his video, but we weren't able to get a portrait of him at that time. We had another elder pass away just before the launch, and another elder passed away just after the launch, and while the exhibition was still happening. The COVID impacted the project a lot. because there was a few things that we couldn't actually do. For example, getting out in community, doing some more community consultation, but also the launch. We couldn't actually be in the office. There was so many barriers that happened with COVID. Same with the launch being postponed, but we had a lot of positive impacts from this project. So we've had a lot of community members come up to us and say, when are you going to do the next one? Like they want to be involved in the next one.
There's a lot of pride involved in this is our story, and certainly council puts a lot of significance in its it was a project done by the community, and it's their stories and it's their words.
Yeah, and it's a way that we can let them have their voices and let them be heard without any barriers for them. They can just, like we said before, they were there from the beginning right through to the end, and they had an impact, like they had a say in everything that was involved happening throughout the project. So at the end of the project, I was saying before with that link, that QR code in the back of the book, so we've got the In Our Own Words link that links to the website with all the 19 participants with their stories and their 300 words. And I'm going to play, hopefully I can play, yes, hopefully you can guys hear it as well. A couple of videos from the actual project as well. So please let me know if you can hear it.
Elected school captain this year.
Not enough bandwidth for the sound. Can they stand, Rosie?
Yeah, I'll really just
Pause. Let me see if there is a way that you can do this.
I think so. Marcus is there. While I was sorting that out, we didn't just record elders. It was a cross section. So Marcus' story is quite unique in that Marcus and Katie were the first time that they've been Aboriginal school captains together at school. So that's what Marcus talks about, was why that was important to him. So the community self-nominated or nominated other people. We didn't go out and pick and say this is who we want to interview. Like Ros and Kim said, that it was actually driven by the community about who they wanted to talk to. And when they were talking about, Ross was talking about some of those cultural protocols, there were times when adult children wanted their parents involved, but their parents didn't want to do it. That was the reality, they didn't want to do it. So in hindsight, we probably see that now, and at the time we really pursued and tried to work with them. And that's okay, that's their choice to not have to do it. So around protocols, it is sometimes hard to navigate a 50 or 60-year-old man or woman that want their elder parent to do it, but they don't have to, like it's their choice. You can't make them do it. So.
But terrific to involve younger people as well, because I'm always concerned that people often only do oral histories for the ones that are more likely to die than the rest of us, but any of us could die at any stage. So I think it's important. Also, you get different perspectives interviewing young people.
Yes. And the word that was used, this is Ros and Kim set this in the EOI, it's the people that make up the fabric of the community. And I think that word really resonated with us, because all of these people are that fabric. They all intertwine to make the community what it is.
Yeah, I think Roz has got the sound sorted.
I'm hoping
give it a
that
go.
I've got the sound sorted. If not, you can have a look in the back of the book, and I can send through a link in the chat so everybody can have a look at the codes as well. Hopefully this works. Hey, here we go.
You were elected school captain for this year. It's the first time in history where there's been two Aboriginal school captains. Yep. Why did you pursue school captain as an option?
Yeah, I've really just always liked being involved in like the Mossbrook community, getting my face out there, because I know one day school's going to be finished and I don't have to look for a job, so I always wanted to get my face out there. And when and I also really like getting along with people and having a chat. So I think that's a good way for me to get to know everyone and sort of build up my resume for when I have to leave school by being school captain.
Yeah. What was the process around being elected school captain? How does that work here in Muswellbrook?
So like there's SRC, that's the Junior Representative Council, and I was always a part of that during school. We don't have to do that. It's just, it's good. And then you'd do a speech in front of your year group and the teachers, and they all vote and elect school captain.
Did you have anyone contest against you?
Yeah, there was 2 or 3 other boys who went for it.
Wow. So you were really honoured to be able to get that.
Yeah, it was really good.
Can you explain to me the process when they announced it and then how that made you feel?
Well, they got us all into Miss Bates, the principal's office, and just said how grateful they were for having like everyone try out, and so it was, and then named the prefects, vice captains, and school captains, and it's something I've always really wanted. So it was a pretty big moment, and pretty proud.
How did you celebrate?
Didn't do much, just sort of
a few high fives around with others.
Yeah, text mum, and then just told my mates, and they were pretty proud of me too.
Yeah, that's excellent. Why is leadership important to you as a young Aboriginal man? Why is it important to you to step up into a leadership role?
Yeah, I sort of think that being a young Aboriginal in general is, there's a lot of like lacking role models, and I've always sort of lacked a strong Indigenous role model to look up to and aspire to be. So I've always tried to be that person for other people, and I think it's so important that we continue the legacy and continue to like exercise our heritage, and that's sort of why I value leadership, just learning, passing on the things that I've learned, I guess.
I've got one more. Sorry, no, okay, we're good. Okay.
You stayed in the home until you were 18?
Yeah, mum come down and got me. Went back to the first home. She come down and got me, brought me home. I love going up the common because you can walk up in the bush where you can be with leave. You know your boundary. Because we did. Well, we knew our boundary. We knew we couldn't get into trouble. We never caught trouble for anyone, not in for the coppers or anyone. Because we knew what we were getting off our parents.
Yeah. So you come back. Can you tell me about the first time since you'd been separated, since you were removed? What was it like the first time over 10 years later to see all your siblings again?
Didn't see them all.
Oh, weren't all there?
No. My twin sister wasn't. I don't think she was there. Not many turned up. They all still at Foster there in Sydney.
And when you were in the home, were you able to communicate back home to your mum and dad at all?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Write letters still. But I'm not a good speller. I'm not a good writer.
Yeah.
I'm not that good in speech with long words and so.
So you just did the best that you could.
Yeah.
What was it like to move back here to your mum and dad?
It was nice. And I love the place. Love being back in town. And
why is Muswellbrook a special place for you?
I don't know. Because my grandmother and grandfather, I used to go real well with my grandmother and that. If anything goes wrong with my family, I can go and talk to them. And but we had one big blue, and I just went for a nice walk up the paddock. And it was nice to get back.
So then you had you've got your own family.
Yeah. Well, my family loved going up the common.
Yeah.
Because they really enjoy themselves. Because they know they can run around. I've got 3 daughters, 2 in Canberra and 1 here. They love to go up there. Now my grandkids like going up. They used to go up there when they're. But they used to ride bikes, run the mile and everything.
That's the end of our presentation. So we've got, this is a photo of part of the exhibition. So while we had the exhibition, we also engaged the local Aboriginal Girls Academy And in the background, just here, we've got opossum skin cloaks that they actually made. And some of the elders who are part of the Oral History Project, were actually a part of putting their designs on the cloaks as well. So it was a really nice partnership with those two connections, because it was families joining together as well, a part of that. There's the mouse. There we go. So thank you. So I'm Ross and Kim, and then you got Lorraine and Makisha. Did you guys want to say anything, Lorraine and Makisha?
I think for any libraries that are within a council setting, one of the things that made it easier for us, and one of the strengths I think from the council perspective was just into who was the council that we worked with. We worked with Kim heavily and Jacinta. So knowing that we had that point of fall back there, that if we had any problems or questions, and had someone that was supportive of the process. So things like when COVID did hit, or when stuff happened that was not preventable, we could ring them because we had an open line of communication, and not be like, oh gosh, we're going to get hammered here. We could actually ring them and go, we can see this is going to happen, or this has happened. How do we mitigate it? Can we work together to get an outcome here? And that was really important to us. I think too, something that I underestimated if you're going through this process is we talked about the mental health impact on the participants. What I didn't consider was my team at home transcribing. Do you want to talk about that?
Well, yeah, I suppose because we kept it in-house and did it, and we went down there hundreds of times, seen all these people, and like really started to love them. And then you're sitting at home and you're reading like these stories about us children being like hidden in roofs and things like that, so you weren't taken away, and you're like typing and crying, and then you've got to see them like the next time, and you want to like cuddle and say sorry all the time. Like I felt it was like I'd done something, and it was this really strange but bonding. I can't explain it really.
So there were times when we would just have to say tools down.
Yeah.
Halfway through tools down, you need to go and do something else for the rest of the day. Because there's lots of tears.
So there's a woman on the front here in the orange. Like we still work with her today. But as soon as I finished transcribing her, I read the right, is she still with her boyfriend? Because she'd left home at a very young age, moved in with this boy. And they're still together. Yeah. And it's like those things as well. It was a really beautiful experience.
I think that's something we'd be more conscious of next time. And can I just say too, Kim, I remember being so excited about having the QR codes, because remember, pre-COVID, no one knew about QR codes. And we were QR cool way back then. And so we used to say we were QR cool, we thought QRs were cool. But I remember being so excited that we had the book design done, and that we didn't tell Kim that we were going to do it. We wanted it as a surprise for everybody. Yeah, everyone uses QR codes, but we actually tried to have a QR code for every participant to go to. However, aesthetically, we're a little bit funny, and aesthetically it would have looked ridiculous on the page. So then I tried to get the IT people that we work with to do the QR off the photo, and so why can't that be the code? And they couldn't do it. So that's why there's just one code throughout. But I remember being so excited that we were going to do QR because we were so advanced.
But what was great, because of COVID, when we got finally to see the exhibition, the elders knew what to do.
Yeah, they were
like walking over the wall. Yeah, we're like, if COVID didn't happen, we would have all been like, okay, download an app or use your camera.
We wrote instructions.
Positives and negatives to it.
And the other thing that was really great was it Paul at the Trove?
Yeah.
Paul at the Trove was, I think his name was Paul, was fantastic to work with. Nothing was a problem. Mahesh had an open line of communication with him. He could ask questions, we could ask questions. Nothing was too much trouble, and that was vital. I would also like to just pay a special mention to Emma Wells, who's no longer here. She's in Queensland now. But the photos, the beautiful portraits were done by a local photographer called Emma Wells, who was Rebel Heart photographer here in Tamworth, and she did a magnificent job for us. She also did the graphic design. And I have said that people say to me, oh, that's a funny design on the front, but it's actually contemporary take and traditional iconism. So diamonds are very significant to us. And so we did a contemporary take on that and used the colours that the elders were like, we love gold. Okay, it makes it feel special and
And the committee named it as well.
They did, the committee named it. They did all that together. So
Thank you. Are there any questions? Anyone have any questions? I've got a question. So you've got the, I think this sounds a fabulous project, super exciting. Congratulations to everyone. Wow, I really do think it's wonderful. So you've got the recordings that people can listen to via a QR code. Are these edits of longer interviews?
Yeah.
So longer interviews, where do they live? Where will they live into the future?
The longer, some of them are on the Trove, I think. Is that correct? Or all of them?
sorry, this was a few years ago for us, so we've just got to remember.
No, that's okay.
Some has been kept for their families and has been stored because especially when there was discussions that were private confidential around removal of children and not from participants in the project but in their roles, their professional roles. So some of that stuff has been kept out. The transcribe on the Trove that you can see is the full transcript that's been edited, but they are only a snapshot of the full film. The full films have been retained, and they are in storage. And I think that we just recently did the handover to Ros on that. I think they're on that file. Sorry, Ros, I just was having trouble remembering. So they're all put onto a drive, taken off ours, put onto a drive and given to council. And any stage participant can go to them if they wanted it. Right. So that's where the full is held. The transcript is all on that link. Their full transcript is there.
But broadly, the full ones are for the participants and their family members only. Anything else is for the public.
Yeah.
Right. Thanks. Just wanted to get really clear on that. Yeah. Thanks.
Correct. And participants gave their permission for the use of the smaller interview, if you like, and as you've correctly said, the rest is their property.
I have a question. It was a very involved project this year. The film you did the interviews, you had the exhibition tracking. What was the document like? What's the release for the one? Or did you
No, we have one. So I work in that, well, we work in the arts heavily. So we base our cultural protocols and our contracts on a lot of the work done by Terry Janke, and we work with artists in the black. Because we actually teach quite a lot of art schools, so we actually implemented all of that into one agreement that they signed with their bank details and provided so that the release covered all of it. But it also talks about, and I think I nearly emailed you back, Ross, to say we should also talk about the guiding principles. So we actually have a set of guiding principles that we work under, and we share that with the participants in that contract. So that is standard things that we've developed off the Terry Janke guidelines for film. Interestingly, there's no workbook for oral history, but Terry Janke has developed a resource around film. And so we use that as the basis to form our contracts and to form our cultural protocols and how that will work. So Terry Janke's website is quite amazing. You just jump on, Google her, and she comes up. Yeah.
Thank you. Can you give me a rough idea what the remuneration was?
$500 a participant. That is one thing I remember. A nice even number. And like I said, whether they completed or whether they withdrew, they still got paid because they still shared their knowledge.
And there was their time and their expense of being there. It was a small amount really for what they shared and the time and expenses. Some of them travelled to be there as well.
The other thing that we did, which we at the very start of the project, we employed because we like to employ local in the community. So we actually employed a local liaison to work with us out in community, who then got snapped up and is now an ABC presenter. So she was only with us for a few months, and then when she left, Arnie Jean, one of the elders, we said to her, can we pay you to be our local liaison? because we want to employ locally as well, knowing that we were here and they were in down at Hunter. So we did have Jacinta.
Queen Bates.
Yeah, Jacinta Queen Bates started with us and started that engagement process. So I couldn't get down there, so she could go around to someone's place and run through the contract and read it to them and make sure that I understand. Because the other thing that we don't do with regard to contracts is say, here's a contract sign. What is the agreement sign? We sit there and go through line by line. What does that mean? Are you happy with it? What would you like changed?
Full transparency.
You've got to be fully transparent. I'll only come back to bite everything on. Yeah. And then Auntie Jean stepped in and was a local liaison and drive around and say, come on, we've got a picture, we've got to go and have your photo taken. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. That was fantastic.
Thank you. Just be wary that well, not wary, but just be mindful that you might think of a time frame in your head that you want this project to be finished, but it might not be that to plan.
By 5.
Yeah. I mean, like we've had a few barriers in between, but like not just that, not just with COVID and things, but even just consulting community. Sometimes it can be, well, like Lorraine was saying, that some of these stories are quite personal, and sometimes it can take a while for them to open up. So just be mindful that sometimes the project might actually not go to plan and the time frame may extend, and need to just be mindful of that, because in the end it's an amazing project, and
like we'd never get there for a while.
Yeah. But yeah, that's us.
Thank you. Thanks for giving us the opportunity.
Yeah, I'll put my name and email address in the chat. So if you've got any, if you just like anything, just let me know. I can send through the PowerPoint presentation, or I did see that some people were wanting some books. If you could send me an email, that'd be fantastic.
Okay, bye. Have a lovely evening, afternoon.
Thank you very much for having me. We'll take that to the office. Thank you. That was wonderful. Yeah, if they're left over, then we can get them back down to the counter. Yeah, awesome. Thank you very, very much. And thank you for giving us your chair. Yeah, thank you. That's fun.
Okay, general business and then lunch. So we've already done the point 3. We've got Simone. Sorry, Simone online.
She does have a presentation.
So there she is. Yeah.
Hi, I'll just see if I can share the PowerPoint.
It'll just. Okay. So this presentation just came out of Simone when she was working. She was trying to juggle various things, and people were asking her to do particular jobs while she was trying to do another job. So it's her thoughts and observations, and the idea is to discuss and share how you all manage your time related to particular issues.
Yeah, so I'm definitely not a expert on this topic whatsoever. I was just, as Donna said, just more and more kind of work pressures and interruptions, and starting to think about, well, maybe I should be thinking a bit more structurally about how I manage up my time. I mean, we all manage time automatically. If you think about, the upcoming weekend, you're already thinking, you've already probably got things in your brain about what you're going to do and where you have to go, and picking kids up or dropping kids off or whatever that might be. But this was just kind of how to do it in sort of a work environment. So I did a little bit of Googling, as you do, and I found some kind of tips and tricks that might help us to improve will help me, and hopefully maybe you guys will have suggestions as well on how to kind of do time management a bit better. So one of the first things I did was have a look at what actually time management meant, and the definition I came up with was time management is the process of organizing and planning how to divide your time between different activities. And it's defined as a decision-making process that structures, protects, and adjusts a person's time to changing environmental conditions. So that's pretty basic. And then I went and had a look at some kind of really simple ideas about how to manage time better. And I've tried to implement some of these in kind of my own practice as I sort of learnt about them. Not always successfully, but I tried. So the first one was kind of understanding how you use time. So how much do you accomplish in a day? When are you most productive? You know, identifying things that kind of are time sucks. One of the big things for me I noticed was kind of just conversation. We have an open plan office and just getting sucked into other people's conversations all the time. So trying to, you know, remember to wear headphones and kind of keep myself concentrating on my work. And how do you manage interruptions is a big one, I think, for local studies, because I think we're constantly interrupted by phone calls and people at the front counter wanting information about, you know, all sorts of different topics. Another kind of idea is to looking at how you schedule and prioritize. I'm sure we all have to-do lists these days. I certainly have to-do lists, but prioritizing is something that's a kind of a new thing for me to kind of think about. Well, I have my to-do list, but which is my priorities that day, that week, that month, maybe even that year. So having to think about that a bit more structurally as well. Another really interesting one I found was to focus on one project at a time, which is kind of time blocking, and to avoid multitasking. And that one's a bit of a controversial one. You know, there's a lot of people that like multitasking, but from some of the reading I did, they were saying that as you switch between jobs, you have to keep changing your kind of mindset, and so you kind of lose time and productivity doing that. What's the next one? Delegation, that's an interesting one as well. I don't know if you guys have tried it, but I certainly have, and the results are sometimes mixed. We have some casual staff here that I've been getting to help me with some projects, and some things work, some things haven't. So it's a learning curve for me as well. And outsourcing and automatic tasks is another interesting one, because it can take a bit of time to kind of figure, you know, if you're using technology, like one of the ones that I've been working with is our collection database, Vernon, and what things can I use in that database that can speed up cataloging. So that takes a bit of time to actually learn those skills in the first place and then implement them. And one of my favorites is just say no, which is, I don't know about you guys, but really hard to do. It's not easy to say no if, you know, if you work for council like I do, and councillors want information yesterday and things like that. But I think some of the things that have helped me with that is being really realistic about what I can be achieved, and also kind of being a bit, what's the word? Kind of giving them an idea of what it would take to complete that project. So going, yep, I can find out X, Y, and Z for you, but it's going to require, you know, this sort of research, maybe this much time, blah, blah, blah. And sometimes if it's a big project, they can go, oh, they didn't realize, you know, finding that, you know, random detail would actually take you several hours worth of going through old microfilms or files or things like that to find that information. And then that's probably all from me, very short and very quick. But if anybody else has any kind of thoughts or ideas that they'd like to add, I'd love to hear them. So yes. Oh, and I have created a little document that we're going to link to the minutes with these tips and tricks, and also some website links that people can use to follow up on any of this information and look at it if you have time. Sometimes it's about making time to look at this kind of stuff. But that's probably everything from me, but happy to hand it over for discussion if anybody's got any other comments or ideas.
This is Angela from Ride. I think for me, I would be more efficient if I didn't check my emails as often in the day, because I think you can get diverted. So if you decide that you need to work on a project, that's probably what you should be working on. But it is, I think, tempting if you're checking your emails to do what you were talking about, multitasking, rather than sticking with the priority that you've set for the day.
Absolutely, I completely agree. And one of the things that I've been kind of trying to do is recognize that I don't have to answer every email that comes in straight away. I can schedule a time to look at the emails, read them, and also respond to them, and then I can go, okay, well, after lunch, I'll look at all my emails, read them all through, and then I'll respond to those ones today, maybe that one tomorrow. So it is hard. I had a great example of that yesterday, where I literally got a phone call from a local radio station who wanted me to do an interview today. And I was like, oh gosh, I've already got plans for today. So sometimes it doesn't always work, but I think absolutely seeing that little symbol on your email that there's another email coming, it's very tempting to click it open and just read it. And then as soon as you've read it, you're off on a different tangent because you immediately want to respond. Absolutely.
Can I also say this with Ellen? Multitasking isn't controversial. It doesn't exist. You cannot multitask. There is a whole lot of science around you cannot multitask. You might be at times doing two things at the same time, like listening to an audio book while you're walking. That does not equate to multitasking, because it is the whole thing about your brain has to stop, shift gears and move again. And so you're using time poorly in that. Can I also say on the email things, turn off your email alerts. You should not be getting email alerts buzzing in going, because if it's really urgent, someone will read you. It doesn't mean, I think you look at your email fairly regularly, but if you turn off your alerts, you're not going, oh, bright shiny things just coming through my inbox.
Or don't open them.
Oh no, I think don't even have your alerts on.
Yes. No, not turn those alerts off, but every so often glance at the list, but don't actually open them unless it's an emergency. Yeah. Like sometimes I'm a council person. Yeah, that works better than ignoring them.
Oh yeah, no, I don't think you can ignore them. I really don't. But it's yes.
I think the other thing.
Can I ask a question? It's Fran here from Goulburn Mulwaree Library. What I struggle with is making time for professional development, and how do you justify that really important aspect of staying up to date with current trends, that type of thing?
Okay, welcome back everyone. I'd like to introduce Miranda. I'd like to introduce Miranda, who will be talking about Tamworth Regional Council's top collections and digitising.
Well, thank you very much. First of all, I'd just like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land in which we meet today, the Gomeroi Kamilaroi people. So, back in February, well, actually, it was very late 2020, the New South Wales government announced that it was going to fund a number of digitisation projects through its regional cultural fund, one that had been primarily targeted towards infrastructure in the past. And we all rushed back from our Christmas holidays to get a grant proposal in. It was a mammoth, massive application, especially considering we had to do it over the Christmas New Year period. And also because of the nature of the project structure. So the The funding was based around local councils taking on a role as what were called hubs, and then supporting local museums and collections through a hub and spoke agreement. So if you look up there, this was the structure that we applied with the Tamworth Regional Gallery as the central hub, and the council itself. And then we had these different spokes, the country music collections, the power station museums, the rock stones, minerals and fossils, the movie museum, and the Tamworth Film and Sound Archive. And all of those in this particular case were council-owned collections. And I know that certainly some of the other successful councils in the project did it quite differently. They were a hub for non-council owned collections, but to some extent that was harder for us to manage in Tamworth because of the number of collections. If we had included Kalala Cottage, Barraba Museum, Manila Museum, etc., we would have kind of ended up with something kind of larger than the scope, because part of the other requirements of this funding, sorry if this is very, very boring, but I'm just trying to give a bit of background here, was that you had quite a limited time frame in which to get this project initiated. And in lots of ways, I suppose it harks back a little bit to the Regional Cultural Fund being about infrastructure. The idea was that you would set up this kind of model and you would buy the gear and you would train people up, and then it would kind of be ongoing, but there was no funding for that. You know, that had to kind of come from what you'd already kind of put down. And so, as you can see there in this model, we've also got the Tamworth Aboriginal Land Council as a kind of overarching partner, kind of who we were communicating with, and we also had a First Nations Digitisation Officer kind of employed as part of the grant. So that allowed us to upgrade a lot of our software, etc. as well, because there's no point in having lots of gorgeous pictures of your collection if you're not going to really do anything much with them. And really one of the major points of digitising stuff is access. It's about getting stuff out there so that information is more available. Your librarians, you know this. So the gallery had its collections put onto the Vernon database. It's funny, libraries and galleries and museums, we have so much in common, but sometimes we don't. So people heard of Vernon? Yeah, so it's probably the biggest player in the marketplace here for galleries. Collections like the Art Gallery of New South Wales or whatever are catalogued through Vernon. It is extremely powerful, but quite a non-user friendly interface. It's great once you learn what it can do, but it's by no means intuitive. So if people wish to have a look at the gallery collection online, it is accessible through Vernon systems, through our website, the Art Gallery, Tamworth Regional Gallery website. As I'm sure you're all aware, not everything that we've digitised appears there because copyright is a particularly time-consuming issue when it comes to putting artworks online. But an extremely important one, and one that, it actually, so I think that's one of the things I really want to kind of emphasise. Digitisation is so much more than just taking a photograph. It's all of the steps that allow you to actually get it published without, legal issues, etc., etc., etc. And, I know that that's the same case for you guys dealing with kind of paper materials. But when you get to objects, there's another whole kind of set of stuff about object handling and the practicalities of kind of doing that and the safety of doing some of that too. So the other collections that I mentioned, they all went on to eHive, which I'm sure you're probably aware of as well, which is Vernon Systems' online database. It's particularly ideal for small collections because you can start off with a free account, and it's not until you actually start getting significant amounts of material on there that you actually have to start paying fees. So again, please go and explore the Tamworth Power Station Museum, the Australian Country Music Hall of Fame, Tamworth Regional Film and Sound Archives, the Rocks, Gems and Minerals. All of that stuff is up on eHive. But I will note that the Film and Sound Archive doesn't actually have video content on eHive because it doesn't support video content. So it's more of a catalogue as opposed to yeah, I mean, you can take PDFs and various other sorts of things, but not video. Yeah, so we're going to come back to the Film and Sound Archive. Okay, so I'm also going to mention Story Place. Has everyone here heard of Story Place? No? Yes? No? Okay. So Story Place is a website developed by Regional Galleries New South Wales that was also supported by the Regional Cultural Fund funding. It is a beautiful website. It focuses on regional collections in New South Wales. It's bringing to light the extraordinary collections and objects that exist in the really, really large number of small museums across the state. And it's bringing those stories to the forefront for the first time, I think, to a national audience. Before the Regional Cultural Fund digitisation round, they had done a pilot project which they called Collections and Stories. And that was a very important project because it determined the way the funding for the groups who applied for the digitisation funding later in the next kind of round of the Regional Cultural Fund, the guidelines and how it was all set out came out of the experiences that they had doing the Collections and Stories pilot project. So there is a very strong connection between that. And Tamworth did take part in that initial pilot study, which again was very helpful for us when it came to doing the grant application. So if you have a bit of a, oh, it's not coming out. Apologies, I'm talking about this and there's nothing happening. New share. Okay. Okay, so this is the Story Place website. And you can see there's a focus on extremely lovely photographs and storytelling. So each object has kind of the information that you might expect. There's, you know, the catalogue kind of concepts down the bottom, but it's very key to this website that there's a story that's being told about each one of these objects and that they're also being brought into conversation with other objects on the website. So you can see that there are things like, can you see my little mouse? No? Yeah.
No, they can't see. Yes, they can.
Okay, so you can see there I can link to the collection it's from, I can look at it on a map, I can see other things that are in the kind of region, I can look at other stories by the same story author, I can look at different themes. So there are themes like community, education, health, keywords, alcohol, alcoholism, asylum, etc. So it's not just about showing these objects in these collections, it's very much about creating that great network of ideas and I suppose it's the kind of the depth that the internet can bring to stories. It's that, you know, mirror within a mirror within a mirror. You can just kind of keep regressing. And you can also search across the top. There are featured latest, the collection is, you know, which town it is, there are themes, places, that's the one that comes up with a map, which has all the various stories listed. Do you have a question?
Sorry, Jeff from Central Coast.
Yep.
Just a quick question. I noticed with the keywords,
yep.
Do you use a controlled language for those
Yes.
thesaurus terms? Is the thesaurus available?
That's a very good question. I don't work on the Story Place website personally.
Yeah.
After I finished working on the Tamworth Regional Council, I think I have been working as a digitiser for Story Place, but I have had nothing to do with the back end of the website.
Okay, but I could ask a question of the website and see if we could get that controlled language, because I could see that that may have applications for other library work.
Yep, I can put you in contact with the project manager, Kate Gahard. I'm sure she'd be extremely interested to have that conversation. Yeah, look, because in so many ways this project is about partnerships. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of meaningless without the partnerships behind it. Okay, go back to my PowerPoint. Okay, so Storyplace. Yeah, so I've actually just shown you that on the website. I didn't know whether I'd had a decent enough internet link or not. Even though this is the council computer and the council building, you can't ever be entirely sure. I don't know what's happening there. Come on. Sorry, PowerPoint's not down. Sorry?
Did you want to go back to your
No, it's just that PowerPoint has just seized up. I'm just going to need to restart it. Let me do that.
No, it's just keeping us on in suspense.
So just a bit more background. Who here knows about the community heritage grants from the National Library? Everybody does? Okay, cool. So for heritage collections, if you actually want to kind of get sustainable government funding support, even oftentimes council support, you need to make sure that you have a significance assessment, an independent significance assessment, and that may well need to be, you know, updated at various points. And the point of a significance assessment is to not only kind of work out what's important in people's collections, it's also to make funding fair and equitable. It's so that there is a way to actually judge the merit of one collection against another, as opposed to funding just being the result of, you know, whichever museum has a, you know, volunteer with a gift the gab, or you know, an ability to self-promote. Once you've had a significance assessment, and if it's a positive one, I mean, look, I've never read a significance assessment that says this is a load of garbage, it should all be chucked out. But you know, they tend to be, you know, extremely fair, but also considered. You know, they understand that the assessors do understand that the enormous emotional components that volunteers give to care for these stories and these objects, and yeah, it can be quite tricky. Okay, so Significance 2.0 is a document that was published in 2009 by the Collections Council of Australia, and it was a response to the fact that, yeah, it was very hard to work out who to fund and how to fund, and yeah, so that was very much a response to that. And this is Significance. If you haven't ever looked at it, it's well worth having a bit of a look at. There are kind of basic assessment criteria for assessing the significance of a collection: the historic, the artistic or aesthetic, the scientific or research potential, the social or spiritual, and then there are 4 comparative criteria, and they are provenance, rarity or representativeness, condition or completeness, and interpretive capacity. And those ones in particular, those 4 are often what we kind of write those stories about. So similarly, Crystal Clear was a document that came out of the Collections and Stories pilot project. And again, it was because there was a realisation that kind of comparing applications for money for digitisation was extremely difficult, because there were no set standards. Nobody really had kind of clear ideas about what exactly we should be saving files as, or how big they should be, and numerous arguments we had about, you know, whether you could afford to save these big files. You know, it's better to have smaller ones so that we can, you know, we don't have to spend so much money. And I think every small organisation, you know, they knew the digitisation or perish mantra, but actually making the decisions, actually coming up with a digitisation plan was massively beyond 99% of them. So this document, which, you know, and absolute kudos to the Collections and Stories team. They had a little bit of money left over at the end of the project, and rather than, I don't know, buying some flags or some postcards or whatever, as I think we've all done, we've got a little bit of funding left over, they put it into making this document. And it is, you know, total game changer. It really means that a small organisation can sit down, they can get a whole series of advice, they know that they're working to a standard that means that they can get funding. It's quite detailed, and, you know, it's a definite good starting place for anyone who's looking to do a digitalisation project. So I'm not sure if you guys are aware of this document. Is it something that you've seen in the library sector? I know that some archives haven't, but yeah, I think they're going to do an update soon, but well worth having a look at. So the story place mantra is, or the crystal clear one is, do it once, do it right. And I like to add a stitch in time saves 9. Partly because I'm amazed that anyone under 30 has no idea what that means. And I think it's probably because they've never mended anything in their life. But I want to bring the phrase back into usage. So in this picture, you can kind of see I'm working with a volunteer here, and we're digitising a school book. And he is turning pages, and a camera is attached to an arm. But you can see there's a bright yellow cord, which is plugged into my laptop, which means that what's on the screen there is what's being shown through the camera. And I would suggest that tethering, even if you've got an incredibly portable setup that you're moving from place to place, is a brilliant way to save a bit. It's a stitch in time thing. It means that you can actually see the photographs you're looking at, that you're taking on a big screen instead of that little one in the back, especially if you're going out to a small village or whatever to photograph a collection. You don't want to have a whole bunch of crappy photos that are sort of a bit out of focus and a bit how's your father? Yes. So yeah, I'm a big fan of the tether. So this is our nice little studio at the Country Music Hall of Fame. So we very much opted to go with a very portable setup, hub and spoke sort of idea. So at the gallery, we do have a set of rolls of paper that are attached to the wall, but that's really the only kind of built thing. We try to kind of keep as flexible as possible. And that's also because of the nature of our collections. They're very varied. We're going to very different sorts of places. So a lot of it is problem solving. So again, to do it once, do it right. Sometimes it takes half the day to set up, and then you kind of take 2 pictures. But it's better than not setting up properly and not getting the right photos. And it's too easy to say, oh yeah, I can fix that in Photoshop, but it's never ideal. It's never as good as actually just getting it right. Yeah, and just to show you some examples of just some of the tricky things. This is an egg washing machine from Moonbeam Museum, and you can see the volunteers here are helping to clean that up and get it ready for photography. And again, that's one of those other things. You can often spend 3 times as long cleaning an object in order to digitize it as, often the photography is the fastest part of the whole thing. So cleaning it up, and you can see that we couldn't move it because it is attached to the ground. And you can see our white backdrop wasn't big enough to actually go all the way behind it. So we took serious photos with the backdrop being moved across. And this is somewhere where, yes, Photoshop is handy, because we were able to kind of get the clean shot of it like that by layering it and kind of evening out the floor. So look, I've already said this, object handling or whatever, and cleaning things up, just such a massive part. And health and safety, that's another thing I really like about Crystal Clear. It puts big emphasis on object handling, doing it safely for people and objects. I mean, this space is not ideal, but that's the space you're in. And so you do have to move things around, and it's you know, you do have to look after each other in these sorts of situations, look out for each other. Okay, I see this is another example where I've put down some paper underneath an artwork, which, so as I said, at the gallery, we do have a better setup, but this artwork is too tall to go in our studio at the back, so it had to be photographed in the gallery space. But, you know, it never looks that great when you've got a floor underneath, so putting a bit of white paper, you can do a bit of photoshopping just to kind of get it out. Yeah, so what do you do once you've taken your photos? I find it takes at least a day. So if you spend a day taking photographs, it takes at least a day to process them, to do all the photoshopping and cleaning up and making sure you've got the right metadata and you've saved it with the right name, etc., etc. So this is again outlined in crystal clear. The way we interpreted it here, and this was something again we had to show for our funding acquittal. We have a preservation master, which is a lossless file. So as an image, that's a TIFF. For videos, it's a different format. We have this on a secure server, and it's password protected so that only myself and current digitisation officer and our manager can access that file. So no one can accidentally open it up, do something silly to it and save back over it. The crystal clear suggests having it on a separate hard drive, which is stored off-site, but with our IT department, we have a better kind of backing up system for that than even that. So when we take photos, they go into the camera roll, they get processed. So then we have an access master, which people in the gallery and museum sector can access, and also the people from the communications team. But they can only open and copy out files. So again, they can't save back over it, and they're JPEGs. So they're smaller, they can be used kind of more immediately to go on the web, etc., etc. Yeah, and so when you actually go to create different size JPEGs, etc., for more printing use or whatever, we go back to the preservation master to create those, so that again you're not copying any of the losses you get with JPEG files. This is the Film and Sound Archive that most of you went over to visit. So one of the very substantial things we were able to purchase with the Regional Cultural Fund Digitisation Grant with this scanner you can see in the background there. It's an Australian made and designed scanner for film, 35mm and 16mm film. It's a kind of passion project of the guy who set up Black Magic. So they make most of their money out of software and effects desks and stuff like that that are used in animation and film. But the guy who set the company up, his passion was film, and so he developed this, and there are in fact only like 3 or so people who are allowed to sell them. So you know, you've got to kind of be inducted into the community. And why is that so important? So this is our significance assessment that we had done by Rosalind Russell. So after that, we had what's called a preservation needs assessment done. That's also funded through the cultural heritage grants, the National Library ones. And that was done by Dr. Mick Newnham, who used to work at the National Film and Sound Archive, and it was kind of has a chemistry background and the kind of expertise to look at an AV collection like ours. And I'll just read this. I'll just jump down to the second paragraph. The preservation of an audiovisual collection is wholly dependent upon a digitisation preservation strategy. There is no alternative if a collection is to survive. The conversion to a digital collection is expensive and requires new skills to be acquired by collection stewards, as well as retaining the knowledge of the technologies of the analogue originals. As such, a focus for the TRFSA is to develop a significant funding strategy to acquire the necessary equipment and skills as an essential part of the preservation of the TRFSA collection. So this funding came along at the perfect time, really, because this is the kind of National Archives of AV material conferences have all been kind of saying that this 10-year period, this decade, is the crucial one to save AV material, historical AV material. And, you know, look, of course, there are all of the ongoing things about having to keep updating those digital copies or whatever, but we're losing that. It's the gelatins and the plastics are just degrading faster than things can be digitised. So we have, and we had at that time, we had one of these, which is a retro scan. Oh, I'm just going to ignore that. Go back to the PowerPoint. So we have a retro scan, which you might have seen in there, which does 16 and 8mm film. It scans each frame by frame, but it doesn't do sound at the same time. Can't do a soundtrack. So that was an American product, and then we got the money for the Centel Blackmagic scanner, which can do both 16 and 35mm, but the really exciting thing is it does sound and it does it faster than real time. And this, the Centel Blackmagic is used by archives and museums overseas. It's also used by the state archives, it's used by the National Archives. So it's very, very exciting for our little archive to have this scanner. And it's also a beautiful object. I don't know if you guys actually saw it, but it's anyway, the designer had fun. If you look at the ads online on the Blackmagic website, it's in an incredibly minimalistic kind of foyer that looks like it could be a house, it could be an architect's firm, and it's on the wall, kind of like an artwork.
So you like it?
It's yes, we are very, very, very happy with it. And so I think I said before that we don't actually have anything on eHive because they don't take video, but one of our volunteers who you met before, Vic, has been doing an amazing job of actually putting a video up every week on our Facebook page. And one of the things, we started it a little bit tongue-in-cheek, kind of always kind of saying, oh, does anyone remember this? What was the date? Blah, blah, blah. But we actually have started learning about the videos by putting those comments up. And now it's not so disingenuous. We really are asking people to kind of fill us in on the background of some of this material. We also have used the footage we have in our collection for a number of public nighttime events where we've done outdoor projections. You can see there that that's, so this is Fitzroy Street, and up on the building we've got footage of Peel Street over the years. And we also had a video on the other side. This was the Peel River over the years, and there was another building which had over aerial shots over the years. And this was just, you know, one part of the stuff that was on for that event. But I think particularly watching Peel Street over the years while you're in Peel Street kind of has a real resonance for people. And again, you know, it's like, you've got to do something with all this stuff you digitise, don't you? I mean, otherwise it's... Now, what's my timing to? How am I going on? You've probably got a couple of minutes. Couple more? Okay, well, I was just going to say a challenge to you guys. I know that someone spoke earlier today about, I wish I'd seen it, I'll have to go back and watch it, about getting microfiche onto getting that digitised, because that's one of the things that is a real issue for Tamworth, is that we don't actually have very much of our newspapers online on Trove. And the other one was whether we could get the chronological history of Tamworth online somewhere too. Because it is already in PDF format. It's just on the, you know, increasingly obsolete technology of DVD. I'm going to leave it there so there's plenty of time for questions. I'm sorry if that was ridiculously nuts and bolts, but
it is brilliant. I'm going to ask a dumb question. Are Lyle Green and Warren Newman still around?
No.
Okay, because that was going to be the just ask them for the copyright.
And it is the most fantastic business.
Yeah, it's going to go to.
It's absolutely. If someone says I bought this house and gives you information to look up it by house, you can go by business, by person, street. It is just how I wouldn't take it like it's just let me just get out there, really.
It's not always right.
No, it's not always right.
I noticed the new Kate Grenville, is it Kate Grenville?
Yeah, she's got that, yeah.
Yeah, because they don't mention her grandmother, who, when I looked at, so she apparently was the publican of, she held the license for one of the hotels in town, the Caledonian, but she's not mentioned at all when there's a jump in time.
There is one online question. Why not upload the PDF of the chronological history of Tamworth to eHive? It would be searchable. But I'm guessing that this is in copyright is the reason why it can't get uploaded. Would that be correct?
Look, I suppose the Historical Society could do it, or maybe the library could do it. I think, yeah, it is more of a, it's not so much the practical, it's the, you know, permissions and all that side of it. So for some reason, the Film and Sound Archive has been kind of creating the CDs for a long time, but yeah, so I don't know who. I'm looking at you, Robin.
Because someone must. The family. Yeah, the family. They might be willing. Haven't asked. Like it could be a storage pitch. They may not. You have to actually delegate. Yes, I will. But it depends on where we are. Okay. Any other questions?
Jeff from Central Coast. With your significance assessment that you have done, what was involved in that? I mean, I'm looking at moving into a new regional library in a new space. I've got lots of work to do. Is there a bad time to do a significance assessment, or, you know, would I be better waiting for the new library and things to settle down?
So you can commission a significance assessment independently, but the usual way to go is to go through the community heritage grants. That's an interesting question. Look, I wouldn't, you know, it's one of those things, you know, you don't want to do too many things at the same time. It's just about, you know, managing these things. And you do have to have someone come in to write the assessment, and whether or not you will then to see, you know, too much of your behind the scenes is another kind of question. I would probably wait, but, you know, again,
that's where I'm thinking, but
because you'll probably learn so much about your collection and whatever as you do install and set things up. I mean, it's amazing what turns up when you start pulling things out of the cupboards.
Yes, as we've found. Yeah. Thank you.
Can I just ask, Miranda, so where are those in an archive keeping all their footage that they do have?
Okay, so all the film is in a room on the other side of this building, which is not ideal because film is extremely sensitive to heat. ideally it would be in a climate controlled environment where the climate is actually cooler than humans usually like. So, for people who don't know, we were in Ray Walsh House, which is the council building on Peel Street, which has had to be closed up because there's asbestos in the heating cooling system. So yeah, we had to move out, and we're effectively in 3 places. So the desks and computers and people are in there. We've got all the film in that other room, and a lot of the oral histories on tape are in there as well. Thankfully, we have a relationship with Prime 7, who, again, this, you know, we've got a decade left before all this material goes, have launched on a massive digitisation project. So they've been trying to collect up any of their pneumatic tape from around the state and the country, and they're digitising it all in Brisbane. So thankfully all of our pneumatic tape, because that's even more sensitive and it's disgusting stuff. There are so many different video formats when you start getting into the professional end of things. Yes, I know we all know Beta and VHS, but when you kind of looking what the TV companies use, oh my God, there's so many different versions. And pneumatic is the one that degrades the worst. It literally turns to goop. You know, the kind of gelatin substrate or whatever, and then all of the actual stuff with content in it just goes goopy. They literally stick it in an oven and dry it out before they can digitise it. Anyway, so we're very thankful that they're playing pneumatic tape and that they're dealing with that. And then the rest of our stuff, a lot of which is, you know, backups. You know, we've got lots of old projectors, lots of old film cameras, lots of video players, you know, all of that kind of stuff that's out in Katingal, which we have very limited access to.
Any other questions? Thank you, Miranda. That was great.
Anyone does want to have a chat, whatever, I'm very happy to. And again, I've got some very close fires too. Oh, I've got to end my thing. I can read, yeah.
Okay, next up is the last section for the day, local studies in the flash, and we have 3 presenters. Craig had to cancel, but he'll present next year at Burwood. So first up, we've got Jo from Wollongong City Library.
Hello.
Hi.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you, yes.
And hi there. And is my screen sharing working?
We can see it, yes. Perfect.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, thank you, everybody. I'm Jo Oliver, part of the local studies team from Wollongong City Libraries, and I'd like to pay my respects and acknowledge the traditional custodians of all the lands on which we're meeting, and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and extend my respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people here today. So thank you for great day and letting me share this short piece about our Bonnie Vale exhibition and event at Wollongong Library. So a local artist, Tina Antico, approached the library about exhibiting her textile artworks, which were based on photographs of cabins at Bonnie Vale in Royal National Park. So there's a number of different small settlements throughout the national park that have cabins which were mostly built in the Depression. A lot of them have been demolished, but some are still standing. So Tina had produced these beautiful textile artworks, you can see on the top right, based on some of the cabins, and she had taken photos of them in the year 2000. So many of them have been demolished since then. So the one you can see at the bottom has now been demolished, Barley High. So the library also had some wonderful photographs from the 1950s of the Bonnievale cabin community. And as you can see in the centre one with the lovely beehive hairdo, there was rows and rows of cabins, and some people lived permanently, some people would just come for holidays, but there were many great memories about life there. And so we brought these things together. We mounted an exhibition. We have 20 reusable frames, which can fit. We usually put 2 photos in each, but Tina's artwork was bigger than that. So we displayed her artwork. I think there were about 8 to 10 textile pieces she had, and we interspersed them with photos from the collection. Our digital team created a lovely poster for us to advertise. And the library also had a collection of oral histories with people from the Bonnievale community. And we have them as audio files, which we host on our Illawarra Stories website, where they can be downloaded or streamed. And so we linked these via QR codes, which were displayed in the exhibition. So people could listen to previews or full interviews with people as they looked at Tina's artwork and the photographs. Now, a lady called Jennifer Rankin saw the exhibition, and it prompted her memories of wonderful holidays that she had in Bonnievale. So she came to us with a whole lot more wonderful photos that really evoked the feeling of the place. You can see her in the 2 photos on the screen. And more photos here. That's her dad on the right being, what's his name? I forget his name now. It'll come to me. What's Tiny Tim? Is Tiny Tim, yeah. Anyway, in the old cars and had swimming costumes. So then Jennifer also participated in an oral history interview, and she donated more photos to the library collection, which we have included on our catalogue. And then we decided to organise an event to celebrate the exhibition. We invited Tina, the artist, to talk about her artworks, an Aboriginal elder to talk about the land of where Royal National Park is set, and an archaeologist to talk about middens found in the park. Because Tina was very conscious of the Darawal history of the area, and she had included middens and shells into, and she had consulted with this local Aboriginal elder and archaeologist. So unfortunately on the day, the elder was unable to attend, but he was happy for Pete, the archaeologist, to speak about Aboriginal history in the area. So the event was held in the room where the exhibition was displayed. And you can see in those pictures the frames with the images on the wall. And then we're also able to show people our Illawarra Stories website with the oral histories and bring all these things together. And many of these people were people who had connections with the Bonnievale community as well as other interested people. So it was a great success, and it brought together these different elements which enriched each of them, the photographs, the artwork, and the oral histories into an engaging cultural event. Sorry, go back to there. Have I just got time to just show you, I think I've put a link here, hopefully it'll work too. Illawarra Stories. So this is another community of shacks. So there's Jennifer, who we interviewed. So the way that Illawarra Stories works is we have a little preview of an interview of each person, and then if you click on their face or their name, you get the full interview. You can stream it online or download it. It's under Creative Commons, so people can use it in various ways. And we also put photographs with the interviews as well, which are many of which are also on our catalogue as individual records of their own. So it was, yeah, it was great the way that it all came together into a successful event and exhibition, and each thing, as I say, enriched the other. So thank you for listening, everyone. If anyone has any questions, or you're happy to speak briefly now, or you can email us at Wollongong Library Local History at wollongong.newsouthwales.gov.au. Thank you.
Thank you, Jo.
Thanks.
And next up, we have Marilyn from Fairfield.
Let me share my screen. Can you see my screen?
Not yet.
Can you see it now?
No.
Oh.
We can see you.
Can you see me?
Yeah.
Not my screen. Okay. Let me do something else. Wonder why you can't see my presentation.
Excuse me, Marilyn, it's Ellen. Are you clicking on the green share screen on the bottom of the Zoom page?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
We do have it on the USB if we need to use that one as backup.
I know why. That's stressful. Okay, let me minimize this. Can you see it now? Can you see it now?
We can see the one that Ellen's brought up on the that you must have sent by. Yeah, hi, it's to relieve you of the one that you sent to me. So we can bring that one up potentially.
Okay. All right then. But the online attendees won't be able to see it. Is that correct?
No, they will be able to see it.
They'll be able to see it.
Oh, okay. All right. So, good afternoon, everybody, and just wanted to share with you our experience in digitising our information files. So we had to bite the bullet, and that's why I called it Bite the Bullet, because it is a tedious job, but we thought we'll do it once. And I like Miranda's motto, which do it once and do it right. So we embarked on digitising 30 years of collection of information files and making them available for staff for research on a network drive. So I'll just give you a bit of insight about how we handle the information files collection for the last 30 years. So we've collected articles on identified subject headings from newspapers, magazines and other sources. Also from research that we conducted for customer inquiries. So we captured those in these vertical files as well. With the newspaper articles, we cut them, we sourced them and placed them in these information files by subject. And currently we have 3 filing cabinets full of them. So imagine the number of records in there, we're huge. So the advantages of collecting this information is topics will be easily located. So our research time was cut a bit short. And the disadvantages of it were it's very time consuming. Information can be misfiled once you use it. The limitation of space was another factor. And as we grow the collection, how many more filing cabinets can we house? So why did we decide to buy the bullet and digitise this collection? Well, first one was to save time in cutting up articles, saving time and space for filing cabinets. We wanted also to clean up this collection. The main reason we didn't outsource this collection was to give ourselves a chance to clean it. What we found among what we've collected over the 30 years was original materials, which they were placed there by different people working in the local history section. So we digitized them, but we also pulled them out to treat them as original materials. And we just found that it'll be so much easier to locate files and they don't get misfiled. And so I'll go into a bit of OCRing as well later, one of the strategies that we took. And also because of we OCR'd them, we made them more searchable. So a global search will find information on specific topics. And we can still grow that collection by putting in place some guidelines on what to collect where from and what formats. So how are we doing it now? So what we did, we knew it wasn't something we can do overnight, and we had to absorb it in our everyday chores in the department. So we've allocated a couple of staff and we put it on their work plan. So one of their objectives in the next 12 months was to assist in the digitisation of these files. So at the end of the year, they're accountable to work on so much portion of that collection, percentage. And we plan to do a few files a week, so it doesn't restrain our time from other duties. So we decided to do it, as I said, by ourselves, so we can sift, clean, and sort things out. And we also got permission from our network, from our IT, to give us a network drive where we can place this digitised collection to make it accessible to all staff across the 5 libraries if they do have an inquiry, a local history inquiry. And we cleared out any unsourced materials, because with different people doing indexing and adding materials to these, some materials were not even sourced. And as you know, unsourced material.
Excuse me, Marilyn, this is Ellen. You're very unclear.
Oh, am I? Do I have to become
clear
clearer?
now? Yeah, much better.
Okay. All right. So we cleaned out and all the unsourced materials. We took out any original materials after scanning. And we used our existing Fuji copier, which you can put a USB in and you can scan materials onto it. Using existing in-house Fuji copier, as I said, we did, once we did that, we did batch OCRing, the whole folder, which it was really quick. And we also locked these PDF documents in batches, so other staff, because it being on the network, so they don't accidentally be deleted. And we can also add future collecting, scanned future collecting from digital sources, or we scan paper materials and include it in their appropriate subject headings. So basically that's a process we took on, and the last month or so, our inquiry time has been cut into really, really short. So I've done inquiries that took me days. I've done them in half an hour. So I think that's all from our experience. If there's any other questions, I'm happy to answer. Can you hear me?
Michelle from Hawkesbury. So you can only staff can access it in-house.
Yes.
The material, but the patrons can check for the, they can check you've got an entry on your online catalogue?
No, so they're not available online because a lot of these materials are still under copyright.
Yeah, no, but have you got a record online that says you've got a folder on blah blah?
Sorry, I can't understand. You're a bit far.
Thank you.
So do you still have a record for your catalogue entry for the topic of your folder?
No, we took them all out of our catalogue. We used to have them. Once we digitized, we took them out. So our collection sits digital solo on the network drive.
Okay, so how does a member of the public know, or the staff know, that you've got that file?
Well, staff know that the collection is on a network drive. So if they do have a local history inquiry, they go straight there and do a keyword search or search it by subject.
Okay, thanks.
Excuse me, Marilyn, we've got a couple of questions coming in online, but we probably, we don't want to, if you could do really short answers because we've got Megan Pitt due too. Do you need permission to share about any of these, or it's all fine in terms of copyright?
No, because we're not making them available.
Okay.
We don't need, we're not breaching copyright.
Okay. For another person, did you keep the original files?
No, we only took out the original materials out of these files, but anything that was a copy, we just disposed of and we got rid of our filing cabinets.
And another one, how did you organise the digitised files? Did you use the same folder name, subject headings in your network drive?
Yes, so we used the same headings, but we added more because they're OCR. We found that they'll be found anyway, so we added extra subject headings to make it a bit more workable.
Okay, thank you, Marilyn.
No worries. Thank you, everyone.
So next up, we've got Megan from Tamworth.
Doing the green thing again. Okay. Do we care? Looks okay.
Looks okay. Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Megan Pitt. My title is Team Leader Library Resources at Central Northern Regional Library. And I thought what I would do is look at our library service as a whole and talk about what the different libraries within that offer in terms of local studies and heritage generally. So you can see the map there. CNRL is made up of 6 local government areas, and there are 15 libraries altogether. And you can see that geographically we make up quite a large proportion of the state, really. Tamworth is the Executive Council for CNRL, and CNRL sits on the traditional lands of the Kamilaroi, the Anawane and the Dunghutti people. So Walka is Dunghutti and Uralla is Anawane, and the rest is Kamilaroi. So,
sorry, we're not travelling through at the same speed online.
Okay.
Wait, can I just unshare? Sorry, can I just? Yep. Just going to stop sharing. Let's try again. Oh, it's that one. No, it's that one. 2. Yeah. So I'm going to go back to here. Share that. Then
You might just need people to mute if they're on screen.
we're definitely getting, the whole point is not being a happy camper in prison. I'm going to shut down everything we don't need.
Get a view.
Sorry. Yeah, really sorry about this. Zoom PowerPoint is just not Just not exiting. Try somebody else. Yeah. Okay, that looks like we've just got one now. So we're going to share. Can someone look at my screen and tell me if it moves on, please?
Yeah.
It's moving?
Now go forward.
No, it's not going forward.
I think at this point, you're just going to have to talk maybe without your slides catching up for those online, and online we'll make sure this presentation is available later on. My apologies for that. It's just we're going to go really over time if I spend a lot of time troubleshooting. I'm very sorry about this.
Okay.
I think it's just PowerPoint's run out of pups. Okay. So in Tamworth Regional Council, there are 6 libraries at Barraba, Katingal, Manila, Nundle, Tamworth, of course, and another Tamworth branch at South Tamworth. Nundle is an old gold mining town. Gold was discovered there in 1852. As we heard from Naomi this morning, Tamworth was the first municipality to have electric lighting, but I don't think she mentioned that that was 16 years before Sydney. We talked about the Country Music Festival this morning that began in 73. And Manila, which is a small town north of Tamworth, is a world-renowned paragliding site and has hosted the World Paragliding Championships. What have we got up there now? No?
Yes.
Oh, okay, good.
Another option. I'm going to stop. You're just sharing from my screen. So that's, sorry.
That's all right. I'm just going to minimize that, exit that, exit this. Make sure I don't exit Zoom.
Can people mute their microphones on their computers?
There's a couple of people that aren't muted.
I can mute them when I'm back there. I just can't do it from here. That's all. Okay.
It's supposed to take 5 minutes.
Yeah.
That's promising.
And so what can you see on my screen?
Yep, now just go forward.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks for everyone's patience.
Thank you.
I'm not leaving it that.
Okay, where was I? Next one. So that there is a map of where all the streetlights were when they first electrified. So you can see that they're all over town. Tamworth Library has a dedicated area for local studies. It's only a fairly modest, small collection, but it's got good signage and plenty of room for people to work. It's mostly books and maps and microfilmed local newspapers. We've just recently had digitised, Library AV digitised, I think it's about 125 Central Mapping Authority topographic maps for us that we had in our collection, and they've gone up on our Spiders catalogue. A few years ago, we did an oral history project where we interviewed, I think there was about 6 people from Gunnaga News Station, which was an AA company station just outside of Tamworth. And it was one of those stations that was in effect its own little village with a school and a church and a hall. And we interviewed people who had whose parents had worked out there and they'd gone to school there. And
what struck me was the affection that they had for the place. All of those recordings have gone up on our catalogue, as well as some photographs connected with that. Each branch has a small local studies collection as well. And we've put in a grant to see if we can get a digitisation van that will travel around the whole region, encouraging people to have their personal items digitised, and with their permission, we might choose some that we'd like to host on our system as well. And CNRL have agreed to fund a position to do that as well. So fingers crossed. Oh, and also we're hoping to have 2 fixed memory stations, one at Tamworth and one at Narrabri, where people can come into the libraries and digitise photos or whatever as well. We've heard about a lot of these already, but it's quite amazing when you have a look at just how many museums and different collections of different types there are in our region. So we've heard about the Country Music Hall of Fame. There's a motorcycle museum. There's the Kalala Cottage Museum, that's the Historical Society. The Film and Sound Archive. There's a guitar museum. There's an Astronomy and Science Centre in Tamworth, which is pretty amazing. There's the Tamworth and District Family History Group, the Gil Bennett Rocks, Gems and Mineral Collection out at Nundle. And Manila has a heritage museum. The Nandawar Historical Society is at Barrabat, and there's the Moonbee Museum, which we heard about as well from Miranda. Okay, so for Uralla, the library is in Uralla itself. And there's a small collection in the CWA rooms at Bundara, which is a little village outside of Uralla. Uralla Library has what they call the History Hub, which is a fairly sizable, for a branch library, it's quite large. And it has a corner of the library where the Historical Society keep a lot of their publications and things, as well as newspapers. And that's run by volunteers as well. They also have the Uralla Stories project, which was a little bit like a oral history project, except that rather than have people interview each other, there were people who knew each other and their conversations were recorded. And that's up online. Gold was discovered at Rocky River near Uralla in 1852, and Uralla's where Captain Thunderbolt, the bushranger, was buried, although there's some argument about whether it's him or his brother or someone else. But there's the Uralla Foundry Museum, a Crossens Mill Museum, and the Uralla Sound Trail. Beaverpool Plains Shire Council has 2 libraries, one at Corindai and one at Werris Creek. That area is generally has cropping, sheep and cattle, and Werris Creek has a coal mine, but that will close next year. Werris Creek was the first railway town in New South Wales. I think it was the first and last railway town. So it was a town that was actually established to service the rail, because that Werris Creek is a junction from the train that goes north to Armidale or west to Gunnedah and Narrabri and Moree. In Corindai, there's a museum. It's a privately run collection. It's called Bob Shed, and it's got lots of motoring memorabilia. It's got a little shop set up. It's got lots of memorabilia to do with racing, I suppose you'd say, motor racing. There's a museum at the Historical Society in town. There's the Corindai Rural Heritage Village on the outside of town that's got lots of displays of old agricultural machinery and tractors, and it has a little railway for kids. It's quite good. In the last couple of years, Corindai's had its silos painted. That's a picture of the silos there. And each night there's a projection, like an animated projection on the silo with a soundtrack that goes with it. And at Werris Creek, there's the Australian Railway Monument, and that sculpture there is part of that. And it's quite a large, I think, Michelle, were you saying you've been there? Yeah, it's quite a large monument. It's almost like a sort of it's in a circular, sort of almost a bit like an amphitheatre with railway workers doing different things depicted in these sculptures at various points around it. And then listed are the names of, I think it's 2,400 people who've lost their lives working for the railways across Australia. And they also have the Rail Journeys Museum. And Werris Creek very much identifies with its rail history. All the street signs are like rail signals, and it's a great little museum. And it's, I think, the station's heritage listed as well. Narrabri has libraries at Boggabri, Narrabri and Weewar. That's mining, cotton and cropping area. It has 3 research facilities. So it's has a seed research facility, an astronomy museum facility, research facility, and cotton research as well. They've got the Narrabri Old Jail Heritage Centre, the Namoy Eco Museum, which is a cotton museum out at Weewar, the Boggabri Historical Museum, and the Narrabri Observatory, which is connected to the Australia's Telescope Compact Array. So they have, as you can see in the picture, I think there's 5 or 6 of these telescopes, and they move along a track, and they're for radio astronomy. Walker has a small library at Walker, and at the back of the library there's the local Historical Society research room, which is quite a reasonable size sort of a space. It's sheep and cattle grazing country and has timber as well. There's the Pioneer Cottage Museum, the Amaroo Museum and Cultural Centre with some Indigenous artefacts and things. There's the Walker Sculpture Sound Trail. So Walker has a lot of public art, and there's an Apsley Falls Sound Trail as well. And that's all. There's the Golden Guitar in Tamworth. Any questions? Sorry?
A lot of museums.
A lot of museums, yeah.
Thank you for that.
I'm sorry. Did I miss Nundle's Museum? And Nundle's also going to take over. Tell us about that, Gar.
The Guild collection.
Yeah.
We'll be moving on to Nundle.
Yeah.
Special council.
And also you were telling me that they're also going to take over the archive from the history group.
We've had, all the information that the History of the Heritage Street Archive Committee has recently been donated to the library. We're working through that very solidly.
And you're also doing a recommendation.
Oh, yes, we are too, yes. Okay, that one.
And it's run by one person. Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Well, that's the end of the program for the day. Thank you everyone for attending and tuning in.